Chapter 240. The next few evolved zombies were either level 1 or level 2. But to Mo Sure, it didn't make much of a difference. When the evolved zombies were about to pounce on him, Mo Sure only had to use his mind to control them. In the next moment, the bodies of those evolved zombies suddenly froze on the spot. It was as if they had been immobilized. Then, Mo Sure's dragons were swept across, and the bodies of those evolved zombies instantly turned into purplish-black powder. Like sand sculptures, they flowed all over the ground. At the same time, Mo Sure's dragons will expanded. It enveloped everything within a radius of 50 kilometers. Then, with a thought, all the infected animals, plants, and even microorganisms within a radius of 50 kilometers were turned into purplish-black powder. They were blown away at the same time and flowed all over the ground like sand sculptures. In the end, this radius of 50 kilometers was completely covered by purplish-black powder. The people behind Mo Sure only saw that the originally scarlet world turned purplish-black at an extremely fast speed. In the end, they flowed all over the ground like sand sculptures. Their eyes widened. They knew that Mr. Mo was very strong, and his telekinesis was also very strong. They had seen Mr. Mo explode those zombies and even humans into a bloody mist. But now, even these flowers, plants and trees had turned into purplish-black powder. This was completely beyond their understanding. As far as they knew, only the legendary immortals could change the appearance of the entire world. Naturally, they didn't know that these creatures all had the Zero virus in them. And within each strain of the Zero virus, there was a trace of Mo Sure's dragon's will. Therefore, as long as he used his dragon's will, all the Zero virus would die. At this time, Mo Sure used his dragon's will to investigate. From a microscopic perspective, he investigated the changes in the surroundings. He saw that there was no longer a trace of the virus in the purplish-black powder that those creatures had turned into. Instead, after their bodies were decomposed, they became nutrients that could be absorbed by plants. It made this land more fertile. It was more suitable for plants to grow. It was estimated that in at most a month, this land would be covered in green plants. Mo Sure said to the people behind him, "This land is for you to cultivate." Everyone looked at the purplish-black powder on the ground and were all puzzled. Could such land still be farmed? However, they quickly regained their senses. Since Mr. Mo said that it could be farmed, then it could be farmed. After that, Mo Sure led the group forward. After crossing the small bridge and walking for a short distance, they saw a factory-like building. However, this factory looked a little different from the factories on Earth. Although it was a little old, a lot of the paint on the railings, stairs, and door had peeled off. However, in the factory, there were some high-tech things everywhere. Disregarding everything else, just the mechas in the factory were an eye-opener for everyone. Of course, these were not combat mechas. They were just some working mechas used in factories. However, these mechas had all stopped working. Mo Sure asked the little monk behind him, "Can you make them move?" At this moment, the little monk had a look of surprise on his face. "Amitba, what a wonderful thing." He took a few steps forward and carefully observed one of the humanoid mechs. A moment later, he gently pressed the back of the mech's head, and the chip inside popped out. He took out the chip, opened the keyboard at his waist, and put the chip down. His fingers danced quickly on the virtual touch keyboard. A moment later. Soon he nodded and said, "The chip is intact. It's just that there's no power." In the Flaming Land, there were 3 sources of power. One was solar energy. The second was crystal energy. The third was zombie energy. Solar energy could be used for normal life, but it was somewhat insufficient to power mechas. Zombie energy was to use the tireless nature of zombies to drive them forward to generate electricity. Previously, the electricity of the entire hunting island was generated by zombies. However, compared to Mo Sure's ambition, the power generation of zombies was too small. In his vision, he wanted to dominate the entire Flaming Land in the future. That would require a large number of combat mechas. The super batteries on the combat mechas were equivalent to the power generation of a small power plant. This was naturally not something that a few zombies could do. Therefore, Mo Sure naturally chose the second one. Crystal energy. In the Flaming Land there was a kind of ore. Because this ore looked like a crystal, it contained a huge amount of energy. Therefore it was called crystal energy. Many large factories and military bases used crystal energy as a source of energy. Some of the larger forces had their own crystal energy mines. Of course, Mo Sure and the others had just arrived, and their strength was not absolutely top-notch. It was naturally impossible to fight for the crystal energy mines. Mo Sure shook his head slightly. Everything had to start from scratch. Let's move the virtual dragon palace over first. Thinking of this, Mo Sure said in his mind, "System, move the virtual dragon palace over." The system's voice quickly sounded, "Frowny face, level 2 virtual dragon palace. Requires 50 billion evolution points to move." Cough, 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 cough. Mo Sure coughed violently a few times. Happy, who was beside him, quickly looked at Mo Sure with concern. At the same time, he patted Mo Sure's chest. Mo Sure shook his head and said, "I'm fine." However, in his heart, he had already complained to the system. 50 billion evolution points, you might as well rob it. The system was silent. Mo Sure checked his evolution points in his mind. Fortunately, there were still close to 80 billion. Anyway, now that he was in the Flaming Land, there were wild beasts everywhere. Killing a level 1 desolate beast would give him 100,000 evolution points. It's only 50 billion, I don't care. Let's move, Mo Sure said. In the next moment, the virtual dragon palace quickly appeared in front of him. It quickly covered an area with a radius of 50 kilometers. At this time, not only was the virtual dragon palace's attack and defense much stronger than before, it was also much larger. In Mo Sure's mind, the system's notification sounded again, "Frowny face, relocation successful. 50 billion evolution points deducted." Mo Sure couldn't help but feel pain. He once again complained in his heart, "If you want to deduct, do it secretly. Can you not report it again?" After a while, Mo Sure led everyone to the factory's power plant. Since those energy sources were not very practical at the moment, he would try to sign in here and see if there was any solution. System, sign in. The system's voice quickly sounded, "Frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, number 1 Hunting Island Power Plant. Sign in reward, Energy Extraction System." Energy Extraction System? Mo Sure was puzzled and focused his attention on the system backpack. Chapter 241. Mo Sure focused his attention on the energy extraction system in his mind. He saw that it was a very complicated set of equipment. The entire equipment was divided into an extraction chamber, an energy transmission pipeline, a compressor, a filling machine, and so on. Through this set of equipment, the energy in the bodies of desolate beasts, evolved zombies, and even hunters could be extracted for use by the entire base. At the same time, the extracted energy could also be compressed. It could be filled into a super battery. At the same time, there was a construction blueprint in the grid next to the energy extraction system. After Mo Sure carefully read the introduction of the energy extraction system, he couldn't help but smile. What he lacked really came. He was just worrying about energy, but in the end, he directly signed in to the energy extraction system. At this time, Guo Jutao had already brought another group of people over. Mo Sure waved at him. Guo Jutao hurried forward. Mo Sure took out the construction blueprint from his backpack. He said, "Find an engineer to dismantle this set of power generation equipment, then construct according to the blueprint and install this set of equipment." As he spoke, Mo Sure moved his mind. He took out the set of energy extraction equipment from his backpack. There were many parts of this set of equipment, and the open space within a kilometer in front of the factory was completely occupied. Guo Jutao was puzzled. They had just arrived at the factory, so the power generation equipment should be the most important. Why dismantle it? But he didn't ask any more questions. Mr. Mo naturally had his reasons for doing things. So Guo Jutao nodded and said, "Yes." Then he turned around and went to look for the engineer in the base. Next, Mo Sure led everyone around the entire factory. The various high-tech equipment in the factory made these earthlings gasp in amazement. Especially the large number of robots in the factory with different shapes, which amazed everyone. As long as there was enough energy to make these robots move, then, the labor needed in the base would be very little. This way, they would be able to free up time to train. This made them very glad that they could follow Mr. Mo to an alien planet. They thought that the alien planet was full of powerful aliens, and they would probably face a very fierce battle. They didn't expect that there were no other humans in the place they were teleported to. The ready-made factories, robots, and various mechas were all left for them. As for those powerful creatures, in front of Mr. Mo, they were just a matter of a sweep of his mind. Therefore they were safer here than on Earth. Then, Mo sure went outside and released the sea dragon clone. There were countless wild beasts on the first hunting island. Previously, these dire beasts were only level 1 to level 3. However, now that they had been infected with the Zero virus, their bodies had been strengthened once again. Many of them had broken through to level 5 or even level 6. It was enough for the sea dragon clone to devour. After doing all this, Mo sure returned to the factory again. He chose the best room and made it his and Happy's bedroom. Now that everything had been arranged properly, what he needed to do next was to increase his strength as quickly as possible. No one else had come to Hunting Island 1 yet. However, Mo sure estimated that it wouldn't be long before someone arrived. The most likely culprit was the Sandstorm mercenary group. One had to know that this mercenary group had over 30,000 people. Their captain and several vice-captains had never returned to Hunting Island 1 since they arrived there. They would definitely come looking for him. In fact, Mo sure was right. In fact, more than a month ago, the only remaining vice-captain of the Sandstorm mercenary group couldn't contact the captain and the other vice-captains, so he had already sent a few people to find him. However, these people's strength was very average. Therefore, when they saw the terrifying scene of infected creatures everywhere on Hunting Island 1, they had no idea what was going on here. He hurriedly fled the place in fear. Time passed slowly, but it also passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, Mo sure and the 50,000 people had been in the Flaming Land for more than 2 months. In the past 2 months, Mo sure had checked in all over the first hunting ground and obtained a lot of things. Although most of these things didn't increase his individual strength by much. However, they were extremely beneficial to the development of the base. Not to mention other things, just the seeds of various plants and animals alone were enough for him to get a lot of them. Due to the difference in soil, it was impossible for the seeds from Earth to germinate here. However, the seeds of the vegetables, grains, and fruits that Mo sure got from checking in were guaranteed to germinate within 3 days after they were planted. Now, more than 300 acres of land had been reclaimed around the base. On the first 100 acres of land that had been reclaimed, many vegetables had already grown and would ripen in another month. At the same time, the wheat, corn, rice, cotton, and other domestic crops had already sprouted. These crops were originally not in the same season. However, on Hunting Island 1, it was spring all year round. The domestic crops that Mo sure got from the system had no seasonal restrictions at all. Basically, they would mature in half a year. Therefore, no matter what kind of crop it would only take more than 5 months to harvest. Of course, the scale of the entire farm wasn't large at the moment. After all, it was reclaimed from scratch and it relied entirely on manpower. However, as long as the energy extraction equipment was installed, the robots could be driven to work. By then, the scale of the base farm would increase exponentially. On this day, Mo sure doubled his check-in and got another 100 kilograms of wheat seeds. Just as he was about to give these wheat seeds to Guojutao had already arrived. His face was full of excitement. With a somewhat feminine voice he said, "Mr. Mo, the energy extraction equipment has been installed. Now, we just need to catch some infected creatures to test it." Mo sure nodded. "Well, let them get ready and test it later." Yes. Guojutao left. After only 5 minutes, Mo sure brought more than 50 evolved zombies and more than 100 evolved zombies to the entrance of the energy extraction chamber. He didn't use iron chains to tie these infected creatures. But these infected creatures were very obedient. One by one, they lowered their heads and followed behind Mo sure. It was like a child who had made a mistake at school and was brought home by their parents. Everyone was surprised when they saw this scene. After more than a month, they already knew how powerful these infected creatures were. In front of these infected creatures, these people were basically vegetables. But now, these infected creatures were so obedient in front of Mr. Mo. What was going on? Of course, they didn't know that this was because Mo sure had used 2 skills to summon zombies and summon wild beasts. These infected creatures were naturally obedient to Mo sure. Chapter 242. Under everyone's surprised gaze, Mo Shi brought those powerful infected creatures to the door of the extraction cabin. The extraction cabin was a cylindrical, enclosed space with a radius of more than 500 meters. The entire cylindrical wall was transparent. On the wall, there were 10 1-meter diameter pipes connected to a converter in another room through the ceiling. Mo Shi came to the door of the cabin, and the door opened to both sides. Mo Shi turned his head and said to the infected creatures behind him, "Go in." Those infected creatures immediately obediently entered the extraction cabin. After the cabin door closed, Mo Shi nodded to the engineer. "Tua, you can start." The engineer surnamed Bao replied, "Yes." As he spoke, he gave orders to the few people on the control panel behind him. Those people immediately began to get busy. Soon, there was a roar in the extraction cabin. Whoosh! Along with the roar, fiery red energy was immediately extracted from those infected creatures, whether it was the evolved zombies or the desolate beasts. At the same time as the energy in their bodies was extracted, their bodies were like deflated balloons, quickly shriveling. Soon, only skin and bones were left. When the people outside saw this scene, an inexplicable panic arose in their hearts. They couldn't help but think about what would happen if someone entered the extraction cabin. However, skin and bones were not the end. The strength of the extraction cabin was that it didn't just extract the energy in these creatures. It also included the heat in these creatures' bodies, and even the weak heat emitted from their cells. In the end, when all the energy and heat in the bodies of these infected creatures were extracted, their bodies, including their fur and clothes, turned into black powder. However, this was not the end. At this time, on the floor of the extraction cabin, countless small holes as thick as an arm opened. A strong suction force came from inside, sucking in all the black powder. This black powder would enter the warehouse on the other side of the pipeline, be transported to the farmland, and be sprinkled on the farmland as fertilizer. Everything on the infected creatures was squeezed dry, leaving nothing behind. This was the terrifying part of the extraction cabin. At this time, the energy extracted by the extraction cabin had already passed through the pipeline and arrived at the conversion room on the other side. The energy was converted into electricity through the conversion. Following the order of the contractor, the main power switch in the factory was turned on. The next moment, all the lights in the factory lit up. Whoosh! The more than 50,000 people in the factory immediately boiled with excitement. When they were in the base, they had to conserve electricity. But at least there was still 2 hours of electricity at night. However, after arriving at Hunting Island 1, there was no electricity at all. These days lasted for more than 2 months. Now it was finally electrified. How could they not be excited? Then, the worker took Mo Shi to another filling room. In the filling room, there were already 2 cylindrical batteries that had been filled. Each battery was emitting a fiery red fluorescence. The contractor opened the clasp and took out a battery. Her eyes were filled with joy as she said to Mo Shi, "You're right. Mr. Mo, this is the first super battery that we've filled. The power in this battery is enough to last our entire base for a month." Mo Shi nodded and beckoned to the little monk behind him. The little monk hurried forward. Mo Shi handed the battery to him. The little monk didn't need Mo Shi to say anything. He already understood what Mo Shi meant. He went behind a lifting robot outside the door. He put the super battery into it. Then, he turned on the virtual keyboard and his fingers flew. The next moment, the eyes of the lifting robot suddenly lit up with blue light. Then, he strode towards the empty space in the middle of the factory, where a pile of dismantled waste was. He picked up a stone slab that weighed more than 10 tons and walked out. He threw the stone slab into the filling hopper of the huge grinder that looked like the mouth of a beast. Under the operation of the worker next to him, the grinder began to work. The contractor said, "This super battery is enough for this robot to use for 2 months." Seeing this scene, everyone clapped excitedly. With the super battery, all robots and mechas would be able to move in the future. Their work efficiency would increase by a large margin. For the next 10 days, Mo Shi would summon hundreds of infected creatures into the base and into the extraction chamber every day. He no longer needed to personally lead the team. People saw these infected creatures enter the base automatically, and enter the extraction chamber automatically. All of them admired Mo Shi from the bottom of their hearts. Only Mr. Mo could have such a godly method. Soon, all the robots and mechas in the base were equipped with super batteries. Therefore, whether it was production or planting, The efficiency of all aspects was greatly improved. 2 months later, these agricultural robots had already cultivated 5,000 mu of land. This land was enough to produce food for 50,000 people. Now, all aspects of the base were on the right track. Due to the many living robots, people's lives were much more convenient. The super battery produced by the energy extraction system was enough for the entire base to use for a long time. On this day, the contractor came to look for Mo Sure. He said to Mo Sure, "Mr. Mo, our current stock of super batteries is enough for the entire base to use for a year. So, I suggest that we can use this excess energy in other aspects. For example, developing technology." Mo Sure smiled and shook his head. "No, continue to produce batteries." The contractor was stunned and said, "Mr. Mo, if we want to continue to improve the living standards of our base, we must develop technology, otherwise—" Mo Sure interrupted the contractor and said, "Mastering energy is equivalent to mastering everything. As for technology, it's too troublesome to develop. It's better to plunder." Plunder? The contractor was puzzled. He naturally didn't know Mo Sure's plan. Mo Sure intended to build a mecha army. If the base wanted to develop, it must improve its strength. At present, it would take at least 10 years for the strength of the humans in the base to reach the level of a desolate hunter, even with the acceleration of the Dragon Palace. Instead of this, it was better to build a mecha army. And the most important thing for a mecha army was sufficient energy. This was the reason why Mo Sure could produce batteries without limit. As for where to find the mechas or how to produce them, Mo Sure had a rough idea in his mind. Looking at the blue sky outside the window and the old porcupine flying by, Mo Sure's heart was full of longing. Imagine thousands of mechas, equivalent to the level of a desolate hunter, sweeping across the sky. How domineering would that be? Chapter 243. The war in the future was ultimately a war of energy. And now, Mo Sure had mastered energy that was ahead of the flaming continent. One had to know that solar energy and crystalline energy were still commonly used on the flaming origin continent. Mo Sure's energy extraction technology was completely beyond their plane. With energy, the next step was to develop combat mechas. Mo Sure thought that he should be able to obtain the technology and equipment to make combat mechas by signing in at the place where combat mechas were manufactured. But he had just arrived and did not know much about the flaming continent. So he decided to put this plan aside for the time being. Of course, with the little monk's intelligence and the knowledge and experience of the contractor, he also had a ready-made cheetah mech. It was not difficult to come up with the technology to manufacture combat mechas. But Mo Sure thought that the system's products would be more advanced than theirs. So he planned to sign in at the place where combat mechas were manufactured when he had the chance in the future. The most important thing now was to increase his and the base's strength as much as possible. It would be safer to sign in at those places when his strength increased. Therefore, for the next period of time, Mo Sure signed in every day in the virtual Dragon Palace. 8 drops of dragon blood every day. He estimated that he would be able to level up again in a year or so. At the same time, he could also get more than 100 million evolution points by summoning infected creatures into the extraction chamber every day. In addition to the evolution points from the Sea Dragon clone and the clone on Earth, he could get more than 300 million evolution points every day. He estimated that in 2 months, he would get more than 10 billion evolution points. At that time, the system would be able to level up again. On this day, Mo Sure had nothing to do, so he was enjoying the scenery of Hunting Island No. 1 with happy. At the same time, about 25,000 people were flying toward Hunting Island No. 1 on hoverboards. These 25,000 people were all the remaining members of the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. The person in the lead was the only remaining vice-captain of the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. Level 7 Hunter. Ding Zhicheng. This person was a middle-aged man who looked rough but was actually very careful. That was why Xianxia let him stay in the group when he left. Beside him was a young man. This young man had long black hair that was as shiny as a cow's lick. Her white clothes were as clean and white as the new bedsheets in the hospital. Ding Zhicheng said flatteringly, "Young Master Wu Erden, as the young master of the Black Pack Gang, you don't have to come to this remote hunting island." The white-clothed Wu Erdan laughed out loud and said, "That's right. How can this young master compare to those hedonistic sons of rich parents?" When Ding Zhiqing saw this, he was both shocked and terrified. He quickly explained to Wu Dan next to him. Young Master Wu Dan, the last time I sent people to investigate here, they were in a hurry and didn't explore the center. I didn't mean to deceive the Black Pack gang. Wu Dan smoothed out the corner of his shirt that was fluttering in the wind and smiled kindly. There's always an accident. It's inevitable. Who do you think they are? Ding Zhiqing thought for a while and replied. It should be the original owner of Hunting Island No. 1, Beale. I guess, maybe some kind of virus broke out here and they can't solve it. But he can't bear to move away from Hunting Island No. 1, so he's holed up in this factory. Because the virus broke out on Hunting Island No. 1, communication was also destroyed, so we can't contact them. At this point, Ding Zhiqing added another sentence. Of course, it's also possible that after the virus broke out, the entire hunting island was occupied by zombies and infected creatures. Someone else discovered the mineral veins here first, and they were the first to get here. At this point, his face became a little serious. To be able to survive in this place where infected creatures were everywhere, the strength of this faction must not be underestimated. Wu Dan smiled and nodded. Then he said a domineering sentence. No matter which faction dares to steal Black Pack Gang's mineral vein, we'll destroy them. 244 Python Genetic Weapon. Wu Dan looked at the green field in the middle of the Scarlet Hunting Island in the video. He said a domineering sentence. No matter which faction dares to steal Black Pack Gang's mineral vein, we'll destroy them. This was the style of the Black Pack Gang. Domineering. Domineering. When Ding Zhiqing heard this, he also nodded his head. Then he said to the mercenary controlling the drone, check the strength of the entire base. The mercenary nodded and his fingers danced on the keyboard. Soon, the drone released an invisible wave that spread throughout the base. Then, according to the reflected wave, everyone's strength was accurately measured. Looking at the data on the screen, Ding Zhiqing doubted his eyes. Level 2 Hunter. 1 person. Great Hunter. 133 people. More than 30,000 hunters. 2 Level 1 Psychic Masters. The rest are all zombie hunters and psychokinesis? The others heard this and looked at each other. Damn, this strength was too weak. Any level 3 hunter from their mercenary group could destroy this factory. Wu Dan flicked his hair and asked, is there a problem with the drone? Ding Zhiqing nodded. It's possible. This was the only explanation. Otherwise, how could this group of unbelievably weak people be able to defend this place in a place filled with infected creatures and desolate beasts? Send a few more drones to check it out. Ding Zhiqing said. The keyboard player quickly nodded. After a while, the results came back. Everyone quickly looked at the screen. It's exactly the same as before. But this is impossible. Ding Zhiqing said, although the people on the first hunting island were weak, they couldn't be this weak. Wu Dan waved his hand domineeringly. In that case, let's go directly to the factory and destroy them. Ding Zhiqing was very careful and said cautiously. Master Wu Dan, this is a bit strange. Let's figure it out first. Wu Dan smiled and asked. How many hunters above level 3 in your mercenary group? How many psychic masters above level 3? Ding Zhiqing replied. There are more than 3,000 hunters above level 3. There are more than 200 greedy masters above level 3. Wu Dan smiled. Any one of them could easily destroy this lousy place. Now there are more than 3,200 people. In front of absolute strength, any conspiracy is a joke. What are you afraid of? Ding Zhiqing heard this and nodded. Master Wu Dan is right. Then he said to all the mercenaries behind him, go to the center of the hunting island and destroy that factory. Although he was still a little worried, he couldn't refuse Master Wu Dan's request. And Master Wu Dan was right. In front of absolute strength, any conspiracy was a joke. After a while, these more than 25,000 people had already arrived above the base. They looked down at the humans below with a disdainful smile on their faces. To them, any one of the people below was a noob. At the same time, the people in the fields below, who were controlling the robots to farm, also noticed the black mass of humans flying over from the sky. They were all shocked. Oh no, there are intruders. They still remembered that when they were on Earth, there were more than 2,000 people floating above their heads, looking down at them from a high vantage point. They were like a group of insufferably arrogant immortals, looking down on all living beings. Now, these insufferably arrogant guys appeared again. But last time, Mr. Mo was not in the base. This time, Mr. Mo was in the factory not far away. Thinking of this, everyone felt a lot more at ease. Someone quickly reported to the factory with a communicator. Intruders! Intruders! Soon, the people above the factory also came out. They looked up at the sky, which was like a group of dark clouds. Just like when they were on Earth, they looked up to that group of people. But the difference was that at that time, there was only fear, shock, and despair in their hearts. But now, they were only curious. They were curious about what this group of people was doing here. As for fear and despair, there was no trace of it. Happy and Mr. Mo were here. If these people dared to make a move, they would be courting death. At the same time, Guo Jutao found Mo Sure in the factory. He reported, Mr. Mo, there are intruders. Rough estimate, there are more than 20,000 people. Mo Sure took a sip of the tea that Happy had just brewed and nodded. Well, not bad. Guo Jutao looked at Mo Sure's relaxed appearance and knew that he did not have to worry too much. With Mr. Mo's strength, it should not be a problem to deal with these people. Thinking of this, he said, Mr. Mo, I'll go out first. Mo Sure shook his head and said with a chuckle, Let's take a look together. As he said that, he clapped his hands. On one of the walls of the room, the surveillance screen of the entire base suddenly appeared. Mo Sure said, Above the factory. The screen immediately changed to the top of the base. In the screen, more than 20,000 people were looking at the base below with disdain. Guo Jutao could not help but feel nervous and asked, Mr. Mo, don't we need to go out? Mo Sure took a sip of tea and said again, Just watch. Although Guo Jutao did not understand why, since Mo Sure said that he could just watch, he was happy to be idle. At the same time in the sky, the more than 20,000 people were looking down at the base. That Erden stroked the bangs in front of his forehead, glanced at the ants below and said, Let's start. Ding Zhiqing replied, Yes, young Master Erden. Behind Ding Zhiqing, a level 5 hunter volunteered to fight. Leader, I can do it alone. You and your brothers, as well as young Master Erden, can watch the show from the side. Ding Zhiqing nodded. Okay. Sending a level 5 hunter to deal with the ants below was already giving them a lot of face. That level 5 hunter received the order and immediately flashed a genetic weapon on his right arm. It was actually a 100-meter-long, python-shaped genetic weapon. He was in the air, and the genetic weapon on his right arm was swung downwards. He shouted, You're just an ant. Dang. The next moment, that python-shaped genetic weapon was like a 100-meter-long thick pillar, smashing down towards the base. In his eyes, there was already a bloodthirsty gaze. He had not killed anyone for a few months. Today, he was going to have a good time. However, at this moment, a strange change occurred. When his genetic weapon smashed into the air, it seemed to have smashed into an invisible barrier. Bang! Not only did it not smash down. Instead, it was bounced back. Luckily, he withdrew his strength quickly. Otherwise, when it bounced back, it would have smashed his head and made him bleed. If a level 5 hunter's head was smashed by his own genetic weapon, that would be a joke. Chapter 244. A level 5 hunter's all-out attack not only did not cause any damage to the base below, but his genetic weapon also bounced back. And he almost hit his own head. This made everyone a little surprised. Old 8, what's going on? You can't even handle a group of rookies? What are you doing? Some people also saw that something was wrong and asked, Old 8, what's going on? Old 8's face was ugly, and he shook his head. Nothing. Losing face in front of so many people, especially in front of young Master Wu Erden, was something he would never allow. He straightened his body and said, That was just a warm-up. After that, his genetic weapon shrunk to half a meter long. Then, the entire genetic weapon lit up with a glaring red and white light. Everyone was stunned. He was going to use an energy weapon. Facing a group of rookies, he was going to use an energy weapon. Did Old 8 eat shit? Old 8 naturally guessed what everyone was thinking, but that strange scene just now made him have to be careful. Since he could not smash down, then he could only use an invincible energy weapon. Soon, at the tip of his energy weapon, a fiery red light shot out. It instantly attacked the crowd below. However, the fiery red ray of light was unable to descend any further when it was halfway there. Then, above the entire base below, a light shield appeared. This light shield seemed to be made up of countless hexagons the size of houses. It covered the entire base. At this time, no matter how much strength Old 8 used, his energy could not break through the light shield. When the other mercenaries saw this, they were all shocked. This small base's defense was strong enough. It could even block the energy beam of a level 5 hunter. Old 8 saw this and frowned. The energy in his body surged, and the second energy beam was about to form. However, at this time, Xiao, a black shadow suddenly shot out from the base. Old 8 saw this and quickly wanted to dodge. However, the speed of the black shadow far exceeded Old 8's reaction ability. Chi! It instantly pierced through Old 8's chest. It directly pierced through Old 8's body. Then, the black shadow flew forward for thousands of meters before landing on the ground. It was stuck on the ground at an angle. As for Old 8's body, it was like an eagle that had been shot and fell to the ground. Soon, he fell into the light barrier. At that moment, everyone was greatly alarmed. They looked at the black shadow that had hit Old 8. It was an arrow. No, to be exact, it should be a spear. Although it looked like an arrow, it was more than 3 meters long. Its entire body was pitch black. Under the sunlight, it emitted a metallic luster. The shape of the arrow was very peculiar. The tail feathers of the arrow looked like a pair of small wings. Everyone in the mercenary group was shocked. The person who could throw this long arrow could kill a level 5 hunter in one hit, and the level 5 hunter didn't even have time to react. So this person's strength should be at least a level 7 hunter. This completely contradicted the results of the drone's investigation. At the same time, in Mo Shi's office in the factory, when Guo Jutao saw this scene, he was also very puzzled. In the base, other than Mr. Mo, could it be that there was another expert that they did not know about? Thinking of this, he could not help but take a look at Mo Shi. At this time, Mo Shi was still sipping tea, with a relaxed smile, casually staring at the screen. At this time in the sky, when Ding Zhiqing saw this scene, he frowned slightly. In this small base, there was a hidden expert. And in some way, he avoided the detection of their drone. Sure enough, no matter at any time, he could not be careless. He took a look at Erden next to him. He saw that Erden was also slightly surprised. But this surprise was just a flash. Then he laughed. This broken base, there is a hidden expert. In this case, let's cut the Gordian knot. Let's see how long this hidden expert can hide. When Ding Zhiqing heard this, he naturally understood Erden's meaning. He said, Master Erden, don't worry, I will let people take care of this broken base. As he said this, he waved to all the brothers behind him. Everyone do it! The execution ability of these mercenaries of the Sandstorm Mercenary Group was beyond doubt. In the next moment, the 25,000 people actually took action at the same time. All the hunters' genetic weapons lit up, and at the same time, they attacked the light shield below. All the psychic power of the Grand Psychic Masters also spread out together. They wanted to find the weakness of this energy light shield. However, very quickly, reality slapped them in the face once again. All their genetic weapons, and even many people's energy weapons, landed solidly on that energy light shield. And the result was, whether it was their genetic weapon attack, their energy weapon attack, or the psychic power of the Grand Psychic Masters, none of them could penetrate that energy light shield. And they could not cause any damage to that light shield. On the contrary, from within the energy light shield, huge black arrows were shot out one after another. Puff, puff, puff. Every time an arrow was shot out, a mercenary's body was pierced. And it was the kind that was directly killed. In the beginning, they only suspected that there was a hidden expert in the base. But soon, they found out that they were wrong. Because more and more huge black arrows were shot out from the base. They were shot out in groups. And these mercenaries, whether they were hunters or Grand Psychic Masters, in the face of those black arrows, there was only one result: death. Until now they only knew. In the base, there was a group of experts hidden. And they were experts whose strength was far beyond theirs. In just a short while, more than 2,000 of them had been killed in an instant. And the most frightening thing was that so many people had died, but they did not even see the shadow of the opponent. Young Master Erden, there are many hidden experts here, let's retreat quickly. Ding Zhiqing shouted while protecting Erden. At this time, Erden no longer had his previous pride and arrogance. This small base below actually hid so many experts. Facing such experts, if they did not escape now, when would they? Thinking of this, he flipped his black hair and shouted, "Let's go!" Ding Zhiqing quickly called a group of brothers over to protect Erden and quickly escaped from this place. Behind them, the soldiers of the Sandstorm mercenary group were pierced by the huge black arrows one by one and fell down. Soon, they escaped 50 kilometers away. They thought that they were already safe. However, the huge black arrows were still shooting out from behind. There were still hunters who were killed in an instant. Everyone was shocked. This F*King killing range was too big. They had already escaped 50 kilometers away, but it was still not safe. Keep running! Ding Zhiqing quickly shouted. Chapter 245. The sky above the Scarlet Hunting Island No. 1 was filled with humans, like a dark cloud. But at this moment, these humans were all panicking. They quickly fled into the distance. Behind them, giant black arrows were flying. Every arrow would penetrate a mercenary's body, killing him instantly. No matter what trump cards they had, they were just a joke in front of the giant black arrows. Some people's genetic weapons were shields, but their genetic weapons were easily penetrated by the giant black arrows. Some people's genetic weapons were a complete set of armor, but their armor could not withstand a single blow from the giant black arrows. This was the terrifying part of the Virtual Dragon Palace's attack. As long as one was targeted by the virtual arrow tower of the Virtual Dragon Palace, one would be in extreme danger within 100 kilometers. What the hell is this place? Erden cursed as he fled. As a level 4 hunter, the panic in his heart was far greater than that of the others. He had thought that coming to Hunting Island No. 1 would be a relaxing and enjoyable thing. He had thought of it as a vacation. But he did not expect that there were people on Hunting Island No. 1 and that they were so strong. If he had known, he would rather be forced to train at home than come to this god-forsaken place. Finally, after they had fled for more than 100 kilometers, there were no more black arrows coming from behind. They finally heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at the Sandstorm mercenary group again. They had already lost more than 3,000 people. Ding Zhiqing's face was extremely ugly. They had come to Hunting Island No. 1 with full confidence because they wanted to occupy the island and not leave anyone else a chance. But they did not expect such a strong existence to be hidden on Hunting Island No. 1. They had lost more than 3,000 people before they even saw the shadow of their opponent. This was F*King ridiculous. Erden glanced behind him and said with lingering fear, "That's right. This place is too creepy. When I go back, I'll talk to my old man and ask him to send people to flatten this god-forsaken place." Ding Zhiqing quickly nodded. "Yes, our Sandstorm mercenary group can't handle this place. If we want to get the crystal source vein, we need the strong people from the Black Tuo gang." Erden nodded and said, "Don't worry. Once I go back, I'll ask my old man to send people over." Ding Zhiqing quickly said, "That's the best, that's the best." Then he looked behind him. "Young Master Erden, this place is too close to the first hunting island. It's still not safe. It wouldn't be good if the experts there chased after them. Let's hurry back to the mercenary group first." Then more than 20,000 of them escorted Erden and fled into the distance. Soon, they were more than 400 kilometers away from base No. 1. Hunting Island No. 1. Mo Shi's office. Guo Jutao couldn't help but smile when he saw those people running away in a panic from the video. The people of the Flaming Dawn continent had always thought of themselves as superior and superior. Therefore, every time they arrived at the base, they would act high and mighty as if they were gods. This made all of them very unhappy. Today, everyone in the base couldn't help but feel refreshed when they saw those people fleeing miserably. But what puzzled Guo Jutao was, who was the one who did it? Where did that energy barrier come from? But before he could ask, Mo Shi had already put down his teacup. At the same time, a faint light began to appear between the fingers of his right hand. This light was only the size of a sesame seed. It was blood red. At first, the light was very weak, far less than the light of a match. But gradually, This ray of light became stronger. It gradually became brighter than a match. Slowly, it became brighter than a candle. Then, it became brighter than a bonfire. After a full 10 minutes, this blood-red light seemed to be more dazzling than the sun. The whole office was dyed blood-red by the light. In the center of the light, there was still a sesame seed-sized light spot. However, Guo Jiutao only took a glance at it and immediately felt a chill down his spine. He didn't even dare to take a second look at it. This small light spot seemed to come from the depths of hell, carrying a biting cold murderous aura and a monstrous bloodthirsty aura. This is? Guo Jiutao asked in panic. Telekinesis. Mo Shi only said 2 words in a bland tone. However, these 2 words completely subverted Guo Jiutao's understanding. In his knowledge, telekinesis was completely invisible and intangible. It was just a human's brain waves. However, telekinesis was much stronger than a human's brain waves. Telekinesis was invisible and intangible. It could not be seen or touched. But now, Mo Shi had condensed a sesame seed-sized light spot in his hand, and he actually said that this was telekinesis. How was this possible? In fact, this was not Mo Shi's telekinesis, but dragon's will. After he compressed all his dragon's will to the limit, he formed such a small dragon's will light spot. Then, Mo Shi flicked his right middle finger gently. Whoosh! That small light spot immediately left his finger. It instantly passed through the window and flew towards the sky. The small light spot emitted a blood-red light that seemed to be more dazzling than the sun. This blood-red light quickly illuminated the entire base. Everyone who was busy with their work was stunned. Because the light was too dazzling, they couldn't see the blood-red light spot at all. They could only see the blood-red light that filled the sky. This blood-red light that filled the sky looked like a scene of doomsday. However, this situation only lasted for less than 3 seconds. Soon, the blood-red light that filled the sky flew into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Because it was too fast, people could only see a huge blood-red light in front of them, with a blood-red tail more than 10 kilometers long behind it. It was like a blood-red comet. This blood-red comet cut through the sky and quickly disappeared into the horizon. Everyone in the base was shocked to the point of being dumbfounded. They didn't know that this was Mo Shi's dragon's will. They only thought that this was a natural phenomenon. What the hell is this? Does anyone know that this is a normal natural phenomenon in the Flaming Dawn continent? This is too shocking. This is too shocking. At the same time, 500 kilometers to the east of the base, the 22,000 people of the Sandstorm mercenary group had landed on the ground to rest. A mercenary said, "We've escaped 500 kilometers. We're finally safe." Another mercenary nodded. "As long as the hidden expert in the base doesn't chase us out, we'll be safe." Judging from the situation captured by the drone just now, the hidden expert really didn't chase us out. At the same time, Erden also took a few breaths. He calmed down a little. Looking at the direction of the first hunting island in the distance, he felt a little angry. It wasn't easy to get a job, but he didn't expect to encounter a mysterious expert. He would be scolded by the old man when he went back this time. Damn it, the next time he came out, he would bring a combat suit and raze this place to the ground. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, he suddenly saw a blood-red light coming from the sky above the first hunting island. Chapter 246. On a small island 500 kilometers away from the first hunting island. Although it was called a small island, it had a radius of more than 30 kilometers. At this time, more than 20,000 people landed on this small island that almost no one had ever been to before. The person in the lead was naturally Wu Erdan, who was wearing a snow-white robe. Ding Zhiqing next to him said carefully, "Young Master Wu Erdan, we were lucky to be able to escape this time." Wu Erdan looked in the direction of the first hunting island and sneered. "They were unlucky to be able to escape this time. When I go back this time, I'll ask my old man for a few mechas. We'll raze this place to the ground one by one." He said the last few words with gritted teeth. Obviously, he was very upset about losing face today. After all, the Black Pack Gang was the biggest force within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. And as the young master of the Black Pack Gang, no matter where he went, those people had to bow to him and flatter him. He didn't expect to be humiliated in such a desolate place. Not only would he be scolded by his old man when he went back, he would also be laughed at by his half-brother. He was angry and naturally wanted to raze this place to the ground. Ding Zhiqing next to him nodded and said, Of course, of course. With the strength of the Black Pack gang, they could easily send a few mechas to raze this place to the ground. What hidden powerhouse? In front of the mechs, he's just trash. While talking, Wu Dan suddenly saw the direction of the first hunting island. A blood-red light was flying in this direction. At the front of this blood-red light was a huge fireball. To be exact, a blood-red fireball. Behind it was a long tail. It looked like a blood-red comet. But this comet was extremely bright. Even the sun in the sky was not as bright as this blood-red comet. Its blood-red light almost dyed half of the sky red. From afar, it dyed the sky and the ground like a sea of blood. And its body was like a deadly comet that rushed out of the sea of blood. Just one look was enough to instill fear in people's hearts. That's... This. What the hell is that? Behind them, exclamations of surprise could be heard one after another. As a LV7 hunter, Ding Zhiqing was particularly sensitive to that kind of fear. He felt as if all the 36,000 hairs on his body were standing on end. After becoming a level 7 hunter, he had not felt such extreme fear for a long time. In his fear, he couldn't help but cry out. Run! Before he finished speaking, he had already activated his hoverboard shoes. At this time, he didn't even care about Wu Dan who had been treating him carefully. Hearing this, the rest of the people hurriedly activated their hoverboards and fled into the distance. However, how could their speed compare to the speed of a comet? In just 3 short seconds, the blood-red comet came crashing down on them. Boom! At this moment, the scene seemed to freeze. Time seemed to last forever. Nothing else could be seen between heaven and earth. Blood-red light filled the entire space. This situation lasted for more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, the blood-red light slowly dissipated. The sky returned to its original blue color. Once again, the sea was converted to the azure color. It was as if nothing had happened. However, the small island with a radius of more than 30 kilometers that those people had stopped at had disappeared. A large amount of seawater was flowing toward the place where the small island had been. And dozens of kilometers away, huge waves of 100 meters high were rapidly spreading in all directions. It was like a huge wave caused by a tsunami. In the rolling waves, countless dead fish and prawns could be seen being washed up and rolled down. This was the horror of the Dragon Mind Comet. 500 kilometers was 1,000 miles. Taking a person's head from 1,000 miles away was a child's play in front of Mo Sure. His Dragon Mind Comet could directly kill tens of thousands of people from 1,000 miles away. Compressing the huge Dragon Mind to a critical point and then flicking it out. And Mo Sure had already left a trace of Dragon Mind on those people. In this way, with the precise guidance of the Dragon Mind, let alone 500 kilometers, even if they escaped 1,000 kilometers, they could still be killed. Thinking of this, Mo Sure chuckled. He picked up the teacup again and slowly took a sip. Guo Jutao, who was next to him, had already guessed what Mo Sure had done. He asked, Mr. Mo, they are all dead? Mo Sure did not speak. He held the teacup, blew the tea leaves on it, and nodded slightly. However, Guo Jutao, who was next to him, was shocked. Those people had all left on flying skateboards. According to the flying skateboard speed of 1 kilometer per second, they would have already been 500 kilometers away. Mr. Mo could actually kill more than 20,000 people from 500 kilometers away. What kind of method was this? This was the method of a god. Thinking of this, Guo Jutao's admiration for Mo Sure increased a little. After a moment of amazement, Guo Jutao said, Mr. Mo, then I won't disturb your rest. Mo Sure nodded. Guo Jutao left. At this time, Mo Sure really needed to rest. Although it was just a small Dragon Mind sesame seed, it had consumed all of his Dragon Mind. With the current size of his Dragon Mind, it would take at least 2 or 3 months for him to fully recover. One use of the Dragon Mind Comet would have to cool down for 2 or 3 months. It seemed that this skill had to be used carefully in the future. Mo Sure shook his head helplessly. His face was slightly pale. He took out dozens of bottles of Dragon Mind Recovery Potion from his backpack. Gulp, gulp, gulp. He felt that the feeling of weakness just now had eased a little. However, it was just a relief. With the current size of his dragon mind, it was impossible to fully recover with just a few bottles of dragon mind recovery potion. He was afraid that he would have to wait for the system to level up and see if he could reward him with an enhanced version of dragon mind recovery potion. After doing this, Wuxia went through the memories of the two people that he had just plundered in his mind. He had just plundered the memories of Erden and Ding Xishan. In fact, from the memories of Sha Qi that he had plundered before, he knew that there was a crystal source vein under the first hunting island. It was just that mining the crystal source vein was too costly, so he had not done it. He did not expect that Ding Zhiqing also knew about the vein. He also told the Black Pack Gang. It seemed that it would not be long before the people of the Black Pack Gang came here. Although Wuxia was not interested in the crystal source vein, even if his own things were to rot in his hands, he would not let others take them for free. Chapter 247. Macho had killed the son of the leader of the Black Pack Gang. It wouldn't be long before the Black Pack Gang found this place. As far as he knew, the leader of the Black Pack Gang was a level 9 hunter. Even with his current strength, it would be difficult to deal with him. Moreover, the Black Pack Gang had 2 mechas on the surface. In fact, they already had 6 combat mechas in their possession. Wuxia was now considering how to incorporate the 6 mechas without destroying them. Thinking of this, he asked someone to find the little monk. The little monk was holding a game console with his head lowered. His hands didn't stop at all. His bald head was wrapped in a bandage with 4 crooked red words written on it. On the left was, try, and on the right was, pass. In the middle was a Buddhist symbol. The game console in his hand. It wasn't a game console from Earth, but a game console from the flaming continent. There were 2 handles on both sides. As long as the buttons were pressed, a virtual screen would pop up in the center. The little monk had accidentally found this in a dormitory. Ever since he discovered this game console, he spent almost half of his time playing games every day. Wuxia didn't care much about him. As long as it didn't affect his work, he could play as much as he wanted. When the little monk saw Wuxia, he chuckled. Hee hee, Ba, good job. Boss Missouri. You were looking for me? In the entire base, almost everyone called Wuxia Mr. Mo. Only the little monk called Wuxia Boss Missouri. This was a huge contrast with his appearance. Wuxia asked, after all this time, how much do you know about the computers of the flaming continent? The little monk chuckled and said, let's put it this way. As long as you can find a game on the flaming continent, I can crack it. Boss, do you want to play? The game I'm playing now directly turns on the invincible god of death mode. Kill your way through, broken limbs flying, blood splattering everywhere. It's so cool. Wuxia was a bit speechless. That's not like a monk. The little monk chuckled and scratched his bald head. Then he put his palms together and made a sound. Ba, that's good. Boss, do I look like one now? Wuxia was amused and said with a smile, Brat, which part of you looks like a monk? Then what do I look like? Wuxia was too lazy to banter with him. After a while, there should be a few foreign fighter mechas attacking our base. Do you have the ability to crack their program and take those mechas? The small monk chuckled and scratched his bald head. He said, Boss, I don't dare to say too much. After all, he didn't know much about the mecha programs of the Flaming Dawn continent. However, as long as you buy me some time, I have a 50% chance of cracking their firewall. Wuxia nodded. I'll try to buy you as much time as possible. Take over those mechas without damaging them. The small monk nodded and said, Yes, boss. I swear to Buddha that I will complete the mission. Wuxia laughed. Do you think Buddha will care about you? The small monk chuckled and said, If Buddha doesn't care about me, I won't believe in Buddha anymore. Wuxia asked back, Have you ever believed in Buddha? The small monk scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. I've never believed in Buddha. But I believe in boss. Believe in boss and you will live forever. After sending the small monk away, Wuxia continued to check Erden's memories. As a newcomer, every time Wuxia plundered a person's memories, he would directly check all of them. From there, he would gain more knowledge. Anyway, his dragon will had now advanced to level 4. Checking the complete memories wouldn't affect him too much. After a while, Wuxia made a major discovery in Erden's memories. There was an ancient battlefield on the Flaming Dawn continent. This wasn't an ordinary ancient battlefield, but an ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Legend had it that in ancient times, two groups of giant dragons fought there, which eventually formed the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. When Wuxia saw this, he couldn't help but feel excited. If he went to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons and signed in there, the benefit should be much greater than the dragon ruins. There were many good things in the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Not to mention other things, just picking up a piece of dragon scale and making it into a shield would be harder than any shield in the world. Moreover, there were many powerful wild beasts in the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Therefore, it was also a good place to go for training. However, those who had been there and whose strength was below that of a desolate hunter would often die inexplicably. Even if they didn't die, some strange things would often happen to them. Therefore, the ancient battlefield was sealed by a powerful being. Of course, they didn't completely seal it off. Those who had reached the level of a desolate hunter could still break the seal and go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Therefore, many top experts who had reached the level of a desolate hunter would go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons to train if they couldn't improve for a long time. After they came back from there, their strength would often increase. Many people would increase by 2 or even 3 levels at once. After becoming a desolate hunter, the difficulty of increasing one's strength increased exponentially. Those who went to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons, no matter their aptitude, would increase by 2 or 3 levels. It could be seen that the ancient battlefield of giant dragons was definitely a treasure trove. The more Wuxia thought about it, the more excited he became. He couldn't wait to go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. However, after a while, he suppressed the excitement in his heart. It was better to increase his strength to that of a desolate hunter first. This was an extremely long process. Therefore, for the next few days, Wuxia continued to sign in at the base every day. Every day, he used 8 drops of dragon blood to transform his body. According to his estimation, it would take another 10 to 11 months before he could increase his strength again. At the same time, in addition to controlling the infected creatures to extract the pods, he would also go outside and hunt a large number of infected creatures. He had this idea: gather 100 billion evolution points as soon as possible and upgrade the system as soon as possible. After upgrading, there might be other ways to increase his strength faster. He would be able to hunt these infected creatures much faster. As long as the infected creatures were level 7 and below, he would be able to explode them into a bloody mist with a sweep of his dragon's will. Of course, his dragon's will was still in the recovery stage. Therefore, the range of his dragon's will had been greatly reduced, only about 10 kilometers in radius. But even so, Wuxia was able to hunt down these infected creatures at an extremely fast speed. A single level 1 desolate beast gave him 100,000 evolution points. In a short 10 days, his evolution points had reached more than 30 billion. He estimated that he would be able to reach 100 billion in a month. At the same time, on the continent more than 3,000 kilometers away from the first hunting island, the leader of the Black Tuo gang was burning with anxiety. Chapter 248. The center of the Flaming Land was a large continent. There were more than 20 large hunting islands around it. There was a hunting ground on each hunting island. The closest hunting island to the first hunting island was more than 3,000 kilometers away. In the Great Sun County of Yuzhou, there was a gang called the Black Pack Gang. This gang was a first-rate faction in the Great Sun County. It had 50,000 members. The gang leader, Yu, had reached level 9. Most importantly, they had 2 mechas on the surface. In fact, they had 6 mechas in secret. However, the first-rate faction in the Great Sun County could only be considered a third-rate faction in the entire Yuzhou. Yu had always thought that the Black Pack Gang couldn't grow because they didn't have their own mines. Therefore, a few days ago, when the vice leader of the Sandstorm mercenary group came and said that he had found a mine, he immediately sent someone to investigate. And the person he sent was his own son. However, who would have thought that after more than 10 days, there was still no news of him? He tried to contact him countless times, but there was no reply. He then sent people to the Sandstorm mercenary group, but the entire Sandstorm mercenary group had disappeared. This caused him to panic a little. He could only send someone to the first hunting island to investigate. In the end, He found traces of human activity on the first hunting island. Therefore, on this day, he decided to go to the first hunting island himself. And he brought a cheetah mecha. On this day, Mo was killing wild beasts. However, at this moment, about 1,000 people were flying to the first hunting island on hover skates. Behind them, there were 6 flying mechas flying towards them at high speed. Mo had already discovered these people through the virtual watchtowers around the island. When he saw the 6 flying mechas, Mo couldn't help but feel happy. Flying mechas were more advanced than ordinary mechas. He didn't expect the people of the Flaming Land to be so hospitable. Seeing that he was new here and lacked mechas, they took the initiative to send them over. Since that was the case, there was no reason not to accept. Thinking of this, Mo quickly called the little monk over. The little monk's hand was still on the game console. He didn't even raise his head and asked, "Boss, you called me?" Mo said, "What's the point of playing games all the time? There are a few flying mechas out there. Think of a way to get them for me." Hearing this, the little monk's eyes lit up. It was as shiny as his bald head. He had long since gotten bored of the mechas on Hunting Island 1. Now that he had a flying mech to play with, he was naturally excited. "All right, boss. Just do your best to buy me some time." Mo nodded. "Just do your own thing and don't worry about anything else." The small monk nodded. Then, he tapped the keyboard on his waist twice and activated it. Then, his fingers flew quickly on the keyboard. As if he was chanting scriptures, he kept muttering, "Ba, that's good." Attempting to establish a remote connection. Remote connection successful. Analyzing firewall code. Beginning to implant cracking program. At the same time, the leader of the Black Pack gang arrived in the air above the base with over 1,000 people. They saw that in the center of the first hunting island, which was originally blood red, there was a large green space. They couldn't help but be surprised that there were still humans and mechs moving around on this patch of green. Ulu said to the keyboard player behind him, "Release the drones for reconnaissance." The keyboard player replied, "Yes, boss." With that, he released more than 500 drones. However, just as these 500 drones took off, whoosh 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 whoosh, more than 500 blue light beams suddenly shot out from the mountaintop in the distance without warning. They accurately hit these drones. Boom 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 boom. All the drones instantly emitted sparks. They fell from the sky. The keyboard player was stunned. On the other hand, Ulu's expression turned extremely ugly. One had to know that all his drones were equipped with energy shields. They could resist telekinesis, physical, and energy attacks. People below the level of a desolate hunter couldn't cause any harm to them at all. Obviously, those blue light beams that had just shot out should be some kind of high-tech weapon. He didn't expect that this island, which was occupied by infected creatures everywhere, would have high-tech weapons that even he didn't know about. Of course, he didn't know that these drones of Mo were obtained from the system. They were completely ahead of the Flaming Land's drones. They had energy beams that could penetrate the energy shields of the Flaming Land's drones. At this time, Ulu was floating in the air with more than 1,000 people, and they became living targets for Mo's drones. Of course, Ulu was not stupid. He quickly realized this and immediately ordered everyone, "Let's go! Land immediately, quick!" Everyone was shocked and quickly followed Ulu to land on the ground. At the same time, Ulu said to the keyboard player, "Order the mechas to land now." The keyboard player hurriedly operated for a while. In the sky, the 6 mechas landed on the ground. The mechas clicked and quickly transformed into the cheetah mecha. Many people in the Flaming Land were in love with the cheetah mecha. It was fast, had outstanding combat ability, and could adapt to various terrains on the battlefield. "Let the cheetah mecha scout ahead," Ulu ordered. The keyboard player replied, "Yes." He immediately controlled the 6 mechas and drilled into the blood-red forest ahead. At the same time, the upper left of the screen showed the images taken by the 6 mechas. It was also at this time that a figure suddenly appeared in the sky without warning. "You trespassed on Hunting Island 1 with mechas. This is not very friendly." Everyone heard this and looked up. In the sky, a young man who looked to be in his 20s was floating there. He was dressed in black. Behind him was a pair of blood-red wings that were more than 6 meters wide. The strange thing was that these blood-red wings were not solid. but condensed from energy. One had to know that on the Flaming Land, the only way hunters could use energy was to release it through energy weapons. Only after becoming a hunter could they condense energy into various weapons or wings. Could it be that this guy was a hunter? However, he quickly came to his senses. Judging from the energy fluctuations on this guy, he was probably only a level 2 hunter. The reason why he could condense energy into wings should be because he used some special skill. Thinking of this, he asked coldly, "Where is my son, Erden?" Seeing that this guy's tone was so stiff, Mo sure did not give him face. He directly said 2 words. "Killed." What? Ulu's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. His son was dead. Although he had already guessed that his son might be dead, guessing and actually having it confirmed were 2 completely different concepts. Now that he heard it from a stranger, how could he, as a father, remain calm? Chapter 249. Wu Lu, the leader of the Black Tuo gang, had heard that Mo Sure had killed his son. Moreover, he said it in such a casual tone, as if he had just slapped an ant to death. This made Wu Lu's heart surge with anger. As a father, after learning that his son had been killed by this guy in front of him, that kind of hatred and anger could not be imagined by those who had not experienced it personally. However, Wu Lu was the leader of a first-rate force in the Great Sun County. Naturally, he was not brainless. He did not immediately step forward. Instead, he said to a level 6 psychic master beside him, "Kill him. Tear him to shreds." The level 6 psychic master also knew how angry the leader was. He did not say much. With a thought, he directly enveloped Mo Sure. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt an enormous wave of psychic power pressing down on his body. If he continued to tear apart the guy in the air without caring, then his own body was likely to be torn apart. Therefore, he quickly withdrew his psychic power and protected his body. In the past, even if he used psychic power to protect his body, he would be easily torn apart by Mo Sure's psychic power. But today, Mo Sure's dragon will had only recovered by 10%. Secondly, Mo Sure wanted to stall for time. So Mo Sure was just scaring him. This level 6 psychic master did not dare to release his psychic power outside his body. Seeing that the kid did not move at all, Wu Lu suddenly turned his head. His eyes were bloodshot because of anger, and he glared fiercely at the level 6 psychic master. The level 6 psychic master quickly explained, "Leader, that kid is also a psychic master, and it is very likely that his psychic power level is on par with mine." Hearing this, Wu Lu snorted coldly. No wonder he is so arrogant. Then he said to a level 8 hunter beside him, "Shoot him down." The level 8 hunter naturally knew what the leader meant. He immediately pulled down the sleeve of his right arm. The mechanical arm inside was revealed. Soon, the mechanical arm was wrapped in a layer of cuticle. The cuticle quickly turned into a red-white energy weapon. Whoosh! A red and white energy beam instantly shot out from his energy weapon towards Mo Sure. However, just as this energy beam was about to hit Mo Sure suddenly stopped. An energy barrier suddenly appeared in front of Mo Sure. In fact, it should be called an energy barrier. Not only did it cover Mo Sure, but it also covered Mo Sure and the entire base behind him. This energy shield was made up of countless hexagons the size of houses. When the energy beam hit the energy barrier was shattered. There was no reaction from the energy shield at all. As for Mo Sure, who was within the light barrier, he was safe and sound. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. "Leader, they have a defensive barrier." Such a large defensive area, this is F*King abnormal. It should be known that most defensive light shields were basically used to protect mechas, or at most a house. Here, on the other hand, the defensive light barrier covered a radius of 50 kilometers. How many crystal sources did it take to support such a large consumption? It seemed that it was true that there was a vein of crystal sources on Hunting Island 1. At this moment, whoosh! A black shadow suddenly shot out from behind Mo Sure. Its speed was extremely fast, like a black lightning bolt. Poof! It instantly pierced through the chest of the hunter who had attacked Mo Sure. And it directly nailed him to the ground. When the Black Tuo gang members saw this, they were all shocked. One hit to kill a level 8 hunter. That meant that the opponent had at least a level 9 hunter. It was not only the gang members who were shocked. Even the leader of the Black Tuo gang felt his heart skip a beat. Originally, if this kid was only a level 8 psychic master, he would have been able to kill him with his own strength. But now that the opponent had a level 9 hunter, it was somewhat troublesome. Fortunately, he had brought 6 mechas today. Thinking of this, he ordered the keyboard player next to him. Find that level 9 hunter first and kill him for me. The keyboard player replied, Yes. Yes. His fingers quickly danced on the virtual keyboard. But soon, he realized that something was wrong. Because he was too surprised, he could not help but make a sound. Someone next to him asked, What's wrong? The keyboard player stared at the screen. He saw that there were 6 mechas on the screen. Originally, these 6 mechas were all green. But now, one of the mechas had turned red. Lost contact? The person asked. The keyboard player's face was very ugly as he nodded. Hearing this, Ulu also looked at the virtual screen. Then he shouted fiercely, Forget about the mecha. Ignore that mecha for now. Get the other mecha to come over and take that brat down. Yes. The keyboard player hurriedly said. Soon, he controlled the remaining 5 mechas and rushed back here. However, after only a minute, his 2 fingers suddenly stopped moving. His face was even uglier than before. Because the virtual screen showed that another mecha had lost contact. But at this time, he did not dare to report this news to the leader. The leader had just learned of his son's death, and then he had suffered a series of setbacks. If he continued to report bad news at this time, with the leader's temper, there was a high possibility that he would be killed on the spot in a rage. So the keyboard player's hands only paused for a moment before he continued to operate again. But after another minute, another mecha had lost contact. The keyboard player's forehead was already covered in fine beads of sweat. Fortunately, at this time, the remaining 3 mechas had all returned. He quickly controlled the 3 mechas and raised their heads. Ulu, who was next to him, saw that only 3 mechas had returned. He already understood what had happened. He glanced at the screen. Sure enough, the patterns of 3 mechas had turned red. But at this time, he did not have time to care about this. His bloodshot eyes stared fiercely at Xianxia in the sky. Fire for me! He almost gnashed his teeth as he shouted. His voice was shocking, full of the grief and hatred in the heart of a father who had just lost his son. Even the gang members behind him, whose hearts were as hard as iron, were shocked when they heard their leaders roar. One by one, they could not help but be moved. However, after Ulu shouted that sentence, the 3 mechas didn't respond at all. Ulu was stunned. He suddenly turned his head and stared at the screen. On the screen, the images of the 6 mechas had all turned red. At the same time, 4 words were displayed on the screen. Lost contact. Chapter 250. The keyboard player followed Ulu's orders and wanted to attack. But he suddenly found that all 6 mechas had lost connection. The 3 mechas in front of him were clearly standing there with their heads raised, staring at Xianxia in the sky. But they were motionless. No matter how he operated them, the 3 mechas were like stone sculptures. Ulu also noticed that something was wrong at this moment. He glanced at the virtual screen and immediately became furious. Get the mechas back now. The flames of fury in his eyes were about to burst out. The keyboard player was suddenly frightened. His clothes were soaked in sweat in a short time. He nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes. His fingers danced quickly on the keyboard. At the same time, Little Monk's report came in Xiaxia's mind. Boss, it's done. Xianxia was secretly amazed. This little monk really had some skills. Not only did he control the spider drones, but he also destroyed all the drones of the other party. And at the same time, he also cracked all 6 of the other party's mechas. If there was a genius in the world, it had to be this kid. After all, he had only been exposed to the computers of the Flaming Land for less than half a year, and he could play with them to such an extent. Even the keyboard player of the other party was helpless. Thinking of this, Xianxia ordered Little Monk in his mind. Test the combat power of their mechas. Little Monk's voice quickly came. Listen to you, boss. At the same time, the keyboard player of the Wu Tuo gang, after a period of nervous operation, Their 3 mechas finally made their move. Not only did these 3 mechas move, but the other 3 lost mechas also rushed back. When the others around saw this, they were all delighted. This keyboard player was really capable. He solved the problem in such a short time. However, no one knew how frightened the keyboard player was at this moment. The lost mechas had indeed returned, and the 3 mechas in front of him had indeed moved. However, it was not under his control at all. It seemed that another person was controlling these 6 mechas. In other words, in just a few minutes, that person had cracked the firewall program of these 6 mechas and taken control of these 6 mechas. What kind of heaven-defying genius was this? Ulu did not know this. Like everyone else, he thought that the keyboard player had solved the problem. He immediately pointed at Mo Shur in the sky and roared at the keyboard player. Kill him! When the keyboard player heard this, his legs immediately went soft. Gang leader. Ulu had been impatient for a long time. I told you to kill him, so do it immediately. Why are you spouting so much nonsense? No, gang leader, these 6 mechas are not controlled by me. When everyone heard this, they quickly reacted. In the next moment, everyone was terrified. If he wasn't the one controlling it, then it must be someone else. It was important to note that the combat power of each mech was equivalent to that of a level 1 Desolate Hunter. And now, these 6 Desolate Hunters were being controlled by someone else. All of them were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Thinking of this, everyone had no time to think and hurriedly fled in all directions in fear. The next moment. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Above the 6 cheetah mechas, fiery red energy beams are constantly shooting out. These energy pillars were like sharp swords. They pierced into these people's bodies and cut off their heads. There was a sudden scream at the scene. Ah! My hand! No, I don't want to die. Whether it was the Desolate Hunters or the Psychic Masters, in front of these 6 mechas, they were simply a group of ants. Their energy weapons and psychic power could not destroy the energy shields of these 6 mechas. However, the energy beams fired out by the 6 mechs could easily sever their bodies. There were even 2 mechas that did not use energy to attack. Instead, they directly pounced. Roar! With a mechanical roar, it pounced on a level 7 Desolate Hunter. Its sharp claws pierced directly into the Desolate Hunter's chest. It pulled violently. Rip! It actually tore the level 7 Desolate Hunter in half. It pounced again and pushed another level 7 Psychic Master to the ground. It opened its mouth. Crack! It actually bit off the level 7 Psychic Master's head. When Mo Shur saw this, he naturally understood that this was the little monk's intention. This little monk, killing in the game, was not enough to satisfy him. He actually let these mechas use such a bloody method to directly kill these people. He did not look like a monk at all. Of course, Mo Shur had no objection to this. As the island owner of the #1 hunting island, did these people greet him when they came to the #1 hunting island? For those who dared to invade the #1 hunting island, they should be more ruthless. This was a massacre. Those so-called Desolate Hunters and Psychic Masters had no power to fight back in front of these mechas. Not only did they not have the power to fight back, but their speed was also much slower than these mechas. They could not escape even if they wanted to. In just half a minute, hundreds of people had been slaughtered. Wu Lu, the leader of the Wu Tuo gang, saw this and was greatly shocked. In the past, when he brought these 6 mechas to slaughter other forces, he only felt very happy and carefree. But today, it was his turn to be slaughtered. Only now did he know that this was the feeling of being a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. It seemed that even he, a level 9 Desolate Hunter, was about to be slaughtered. He quickly took out something that looked like a lipstick stick. He pressed it gently. In the next moment, his body turned into a bluish-white ball of light. In less than half a second, the bluish-white ball of light had disappeared. At the same time, Little Monk's voice sounded in Mo Shur's mind. I'm sorry, boss. Their boss escaped. Damn it! The corners of Mo Shur's mouth curled into a faint arc. He said, It's okay. He naturally knew that the Wu Tuo gang leader had used the wormhole teleportation technique. It could teleport his body to another place in a short time. However, Mo Shur had already spent 10 billion evolution points to sign out a strain of Virus 0 and implanted it into his body. As early as when Mo Shur knew they were coming, he had already thought of this move. He knew that if the flaming continent remained peaceful, there would be frequent visitors to the number 1 hunting island. After all, if the entire number 1 hunting island was infected, it would be very conspicuous on the entire continent. Moreover, although not many people knew about the crystal source vein under the number 1 hunting island, it was still not a small number. If he wanted to stop these people from coming, he had to create more chaos. He had to attract the attention of those people. As long as the world was in chaos, no one would pay attention to the number 1 hunting island. Then, Mo Sure could use this time to develop quickly. When they sorted out the chaos and returned their attention to the number 1 hunting island, they would be surprised to find that the number 1 hunting island had already become an existence that they could only look up to. Chapter 251. Hunting Island Number 1. At the edge of the Scarlet Forest. 6 cheetah mechas were slaughtering more than 1,000 people. Blood flowed like a river, and broken limbs flew everywhere. Mo Sure looked at the 6 cheetah mechas with neither sadness nor joy on his face. There was nothing to be happy about getting these 6 cheetah mechas. After all, his goal was an army of mechas. 6 cheetah mechas were nothing. On the contrary, the 6 cheetah mechas he obtained today made him fall into deep thought. These 6 mechas originally belonged to the Black Pack Gang. Now that the monk had cracked the firewall, they were slaughtering the Black Pack Gang members. Then one day, if he had a mecha army, he would be able to do so. If the firewall was cracked by others, this mecha army would turn on him and even massacre the entire base. Then, wouldn't he have no power to fight back at all? Gradually, the screams became fewer and fewer. The number of people still standing on the ground became fewer and fewer. When the last person was slaughtered, Mo Sure said to the monk in his mind, "If there's a chance, make an anti-cracking program." The little monk's voice sounded, "Okay, boss, I thought about it just now. With an anti-cracking program, it's impossible for them to take our mechas over." Mo Sure shook his head and said, "What I mean is, let them take the mechas over." The little monk reacted quickly. "Boss, you mean to let them think that they have cracked our firewall and take the mechas over? In fact, they haven't cracked it at all. After they take it over, I'll control it again, and the mechas will be able to kill them over there?" Mo Sure nodded. "Yes." The little monk chuckled. Hee, not bad, boss, you're so cunning. I admire you." Mo Sure added, "That's right. Also, add a self-destruct program. If we really can't control it anymore, these mechas will self-destruct." The little monk said, "Boss, you're so thoughtful. Don't worry, I'll make it for you within a month." After talking about business, the little monk sighed again. "Boss, it was really fun killing just now. Next time, if there's such an opportunity, you must bring me along." Mo Sure laughed. "You really don't look like a monk." The little monk chuckled and said, "I'm just helping them transcend. I'm doing good deeds and accumulating merit. It ba." Next, Mo Sure continued to look through the memories of the gang leader of the Black Pack Gang. From his memories, he learned a lot of useful information. At the same time, Mo Sure once again checked the information about the ancient dragon battlefield. Moreover, Wu Lu clearly knew more about the ancient dragon battlefield than his son did. He even knew which province the ancient dragon battlefield was located in. This made Mo Sure's heart burn with passion once again. At the same time, in Dari Prefecture of Yuzhou Province. This was one of the more remote prefectures on the Flaming Dawn continent. In the entire county, the largest faction was the Black Pack Gang. In the courtyard of the Black Pack Gang's headquarters, a ball of light suddenly appeared without warning. Then, the blue and white light condensed into the silhouette of a human. It was none other than Wu Lu, the leader of the Black Pack Gang. After Wu Lu appeared, he was still in a state of shock. He strode into the main hall. His wife heard the footsteps and hurriedly came up to him. "Gang leader, where's our son? Did you find him?" But after saying this, she found that something was wrong. She saw that the gang leader's eyes were still bloodshot. His hair was messy, and there was even a trace of shock on his face. She hurriedly asked with concern, "Gang leader, what happened?" Ulu's expression was ugly. But he couldn't directly tell this woman the news of his son's death. He only said, "We're in trouble. The 1,000 people I brought are all dead, and the 6 mechas were all taken." "Ah!" The woman was shocked and hurriedly asked, "How did this happen?" Gang leader Ulu slammed his fist on the stone table. Crash! The stone table instantly shattered into pieces. He gritted his teeth and said, "Where there's life, there's hope. One day, I'll kill my way to the first hunting island. I'll kill that kid." The woman knew that she couldn't say anything else. She agreed and said, "As long as you're fine, we can regroup and buy a few more mechas. Or, we can also join forces with the other forces in the other counties and kill our way to the first hunting island. Raze that place to the ground. Avenge our 1,000 brothers." These words were exactly what Wu Lu wanted to hear. He immediately ordered, "Men, prepare the gifts. I'll go find the other forces now." However, as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. His expression changed drastically, and his entire body froze on the spot. Seeing this, the woman's beautiful face also turned pale. She asked in shock, "Gang leader, what's wrong?" The gang leader didn't have time to pay attention to her at this time. He only felt that something seemed to be expanding rapidly in his body. He didn't have time to say anything, let alone do anything. The next moment, bang, within his body, a blood-red shockwave quickly spread out. It instantly rushed out of his body and spread to the entire main hall, and then to the entire Black Tuo gang. This shockwave seemed to have no impact. It rushed to people, and even to the flowers and plants, but the flowers and plants didn't even shake. However, whether it was people, flowers, plants or trees, after being affected by the shockwave, they quickly changed. The woman and the gang members of Black Tuo gang quickly had greenish-black veins on their skin. Their eyes also turned grayish-white. However, unlike the zombies on Earth, their grayish-white eyes were more bloodshot. They looked more terrifying than the zombies on Earth. Each of them had become evolved zombies. The flowers and plants in the courtyard quickly became tall and big. At the same time, they also turned scarlet. Thick sanguisurincus began to hang down from the trees outside the courtyard. These sanguisurincus seemed to be alive, like blood snakes, constantly twisting. It looked even more strange and terrifying. At the same time, the blood-red shockwave continued to spread outwards. 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 50 kilometers. It didn't stop until it spread out to a radius of 100 kilometers. Within this range of 100 kilometers, all creatures became infected. And all of the infected creatures had a trace of Mo Shi's dragon will in their bodies. Mo Shi could easily know the situation within the range of the virus zero infection. After discovering this, a smile appeared on Mo Shi's face. He knew that in the next period of time, the infected animals within the infection range would continue to move around. The entire infection range would continue to expand. And the news of the infection here would quickly spread throughout Yuzhou. At that time, the infection of Great Sun County would attract a lot of attention. As for his hunting island number 1, he would be able to develop in silence. Chapter 252. Mo Shi used the strand of dragon intent he had left on Ulu to investigate the situation in the Great Sun County. He was temporarily relieved. His next short-term goal was to quickly collect evolution points and upgrade the system. Only by upgrading the system could he increase his strength quickly. Then he could quickly become a desolate hunter and go to the ancient dragon battlefield. Thus, Mo Shi crazily killed desolate beasts on the first hunting island. With his strength, killing hundreds of desolate beasts every hour was not a problem. That was tens of millions of evolution points. In a day, he would earn 300 to 500 million evolution points. Adding on the clones on Earth, the level 10 psychokinesis, and the sea dragon clone, he could earn 300 to 500 million evolution points every day. Mo Shi earned 7 to 1 billion evolution points every day. Even so, he felt that it was still a bit slow. Fortunately, after a few days, his telekinesis had slowly recovered to a radius of 100 kilometers. The speed of killing infected creatures had greatly increased. He would earn more than 2 billion evolution points every day. At the same time, in the Great Sun County of Yuzhou, the princess's manor. The princess looked at the messages on the screen and felt a headache. Estimated death toll is more than 2 million. With the Black Tuo gang as the center, everything within a radius of 130 kilometers has been infected and turned blood red. The infection range is still expanding. According to experts, if it is not controlled, The infection range will reach 300 kilometers within a month. It was not the first time a virus had leaked on the Flaming Continent. The Flaming Continent had more than 20 hunting islands and more than 20 hunting grounds. The owners of these hunting grounds were responsible for releasing all kinds of viruses into the hunting grounds and giving birth to powerful infected creatures. The desolate hunters could go to these hunting grounds to gain experience. Thus, if they were not careful, the virus would leak. However, since they could release these viruses, they naturally had a lot of research on them. They were very clear on how these viruses spread and their weaknesses. Thus, even if there was a virus leak, they could control it in a very short time. However, the virus that leaked this time was a new type of virus. The princess sent out several groups of experts to study this new type of virus. In the end, they found that with their current methods, they could not kill this virus. Even the disinfectant known as 10,000 poison extermination was useless. This was the main reason why the princess was having a headache. Two strategists stood behind the princess. Princess, we should report this to the governor as soon as possible. Otherwise, if things get out of hand, we won't be able to bear the consequences. A long-bearded strategist said. The princess remained silent. Another strategist with a fair complexion shook his head. I don't think it's appropriate. If the governor knew that our princess was unable to resolve this matter, wouldn't he doubt our princess's ability? And if we can't solve it, we'll report it to the governor. It's like throwing a big problem to the governor. Will the governor be happy? If the governor is unhappy, none of us will have a good time. The long-bearded tactician stared at the fair-skinned tactician and said angrily, human lives are at stake. How can we abandon the lives of the common people for the sake of a black veil on our heads? The fair-skinned strategist sneered. Humph, even if it's a matter of life and death, you can't throw the trouble to the leaders. Our mission is to help the leaders solve their problems. The long-bearded tactician was also angry. His voice rose an octave. Then what do you think we should do? The fair-skinned tactician looked coldly at the long-bearded tactician. It's simple. Just 2 words. The princess's eyes flashed as she looked at the fair-skinned strategist. The fair-skinned strategist said slowly, nuclear flattening. The long-bearded strategist shook his head. I knew you wouldn't say anything good. Have you forgotten what the Continental Nuclear Weapons Convention says? If people know that we used nuclear weapons without permission, I'm afraid. The fair-skinned strategist interrupted the long-bearded strategist. How big is the continent? Our Great Sun County is just a small place. We'll clear the area first and then detonate the nuclear bombs. Who will know? Plus, how many nuclear bombs are detonated every year on the continent? Have you done a count? 300. Do you think no one will know if more than 300 nuclear bombs are detonated? We're all adults. There are a lot of things that people just turn a blind eye to. Don't take it too seriously. The long-bearded strategist shook his head. If everyone thinks the same way as you do, the Flaming Dawn continent will be finished in less than 500 years. The fair-skinned strategist was amused and laughed. We hunters can live up to 200 years old at most. We don't care about what happens 500 years later. Maybe we'll find another habitable planet in 500 years and migrate. The long-bearded strategist wanted to say something, but the princess spoke first. Then, let's just do it. The long-bearded strategist paused, then shook his head and sighed. Sigh. This was the current situation of the Flaming Origin continent. He couldn't do anything by himself. Therefore, they used 3 days to move the people around the infected area to a place far away from the infected area. They also used drones to check the infected area to make sure that there were no humans around. Then, they dropped a nuclear bomb on the infected area. Flames shot up into the sky, and a huge mushroom cloud rose. The shockwave destroyed all the buildings within a radius of more than 100 kilometers in a very short time. Not even a blade of grass grew on the ground. However, 3 hours after the explosion, when they sent the drone to investigate again, they found nothing. They were shocked to find that the infected creatures that had been destroyed by the nuclear explosion were quickly recovering. This new virus had a strong self-healing ability. Not only could the nuclear bomb not kill them, even the cells that were killed by the radiation of the nuclear explosion could be quickly repaired. This discovery caused a wave of panic in the princess's heart. The strategist's already pale face turned even paler. There was almost nothing in the flaming origin continent that couldn't be killed by nuclear bombs. And now, this virus wasn't afraid of nuclear bombs at all. Not being afraid of nuclear bombs meant that it wasn't afraid of anything. Didn't that mean that if protective measures weren't taken as soon as possible and this virus was allowed to spread, the entire flaming origin continent would be doomed? Finally, the strategist said to the princess, "Princess, I'm afraid this virus is not simple. We have to report to the governor." The princess's expression was extremely serious as she nodded. She only said one word, "Okay." Soon, the governor learned about what happened in the Great Sun County. His first reaction was to do the same. But when he learned that the virus wasn't even afraid of nuclear bombs, he panicked. He quickly organized manpower and physical resources to build a quarantine zone around the infected area. At the very least, the virus couldn't be allowed to continue spreading. The incident in the infected area of the Great Sun County attracted the attention of almost everyone in Yuzhou. The few forces who knew that there was a crystal source vein on Hunting Island No. 1 had temporarily given up on the idea of going to Hunting Island No. 1. They felt that it was better to wait for a while. It would be safer to go out after the new virus was eliminated. Chapter 253. Those forces all set their sights on the Great Sun County. This gave Mo Sure a chance to develop. He continued to sign in every day, and at the same time, he continued to kill those infected creatures. Hunting Island No. 1 was extremely large. Its area was probably similar to the area of China on Earth. On such a large area, the number of desolate beasts was in the tens of billions. After nearly 2 months of killing, Mo Sure's evolution points had gradually approached 100 billion. Finally, on this day, when his dragon will swept across again, all the desolate beasts within a radius of 150 kilometers exploded into a bloody mist. A notification sounded in his mind. Frowny face. The total number of evolution points has reached 100 billion points. The system can be upgraded. Do you want to upgrade immediately? Mo Sure was overjoyed. He was finally going to upgrade. However, he didn't upgrade immediately. Instead, he took a few steps and jumped back into the base. He hadn't signed in yet today. Soon after signing in, he said in his mind, "Upgrade now." The system's voice quickly sounded. Frowny face. This upgrade will consume 100 billion evolution points. Do you want to confirm the upgrade? Of course, quickly upgrade. Mo Sure couldn't wait to rub his hands. He felt that his palms were sweating. Although it wasn't the first time he upgraded. However, because he had waited for too long this time, and because his strength had been increasing very slowly recently, he hoped that after the system upgraded, his strength would increase faster. Therefore, he was full of expectations for this upgrade. This upgrade will take 24 hours. During the upgrade, you cannot sign in. The system's voice sounded again. Mo Sure was slightly stunned. In the past, it only took 12 hours to upgrade, but this time it actually took 24 hours? Whatever, I'll upgrade first. For the next day, Mo Sure stayed in the base obediently and didn't go anywhere. Although it was only 24 hours, only one day. However, because he was too expectant, Mo Sure felt that each day was like a year. It seemed that waiting quietly wasn't a solution. Something had to happen to make time pass faster. Fortunately, something happened in the afternoon. Emma brought her son into Mo Sure's office. "Master, my strength has increased." Hearing this, Mo Sure opened the blood dragon's eye and looked at Emma. Species: Blood Clan, Level 1 Vampire, Level 1 Psychic. Mo Sure's heart was filled with joy. Level 1 Evolved Vampire was equivalent to a Level 1 Hunter. Emma was the first person to reach the level of a scavenger other than himself. If the base wanted to develop, the scavenger hunters were indispensable. Don't forget that Emma is also a psychic master. This allowed her to crush Level 2 Scavenger. He could even challenge a Level 3 Hunter by 2 levels. Thinking of this, Mo Sure had an idea. Emma had become a Level 10 super mutant blood breed after absorbing Dracula's blood. Then, he stayed in the base for a few months and reached Level 1 to evolve into a vampire. In that case, he could sign in and get some Dracula's blood from the system. For others to absorb, turning them all into Level 10 super mutant blood breeds. With the help of the Dragon Palace, These level 10 super mutant blood breeds could become level 1 evolved blood breeds within a few months. In fact, he had thought of this when he first came to the Flaming Dawn continent. However, at that time, he had to sign in at various places to increase the equipment of the base. He also had to constantly sign in to increase his strength. Therefore, he could only put this idea aside for now. Now that the system was about to be upgraded, perhaps after the upgrade, the speed of his strength increase would be greatly accelerated. Then, he would be able to free up some sign-in opportunities, sign in Dracula's blood, and create level 10 super mutant blood breeds. Mo Sure carefully sized up Emma, who had just leveled up. He saw that her figure seemed to be getting better. She was fat where she should be fat, and thin where she should be thin. There was not a trace of extra fat. She did not look dry. Moreover, her every movement exuded the charm of a mature woman. Even someone as determined as Mo Sure couldn't help but feel a little emotional. She was simply a natural beauty. Mo Sure said, after being promoted to level 1 evolved blood breed, your level is equivalent to a level 1 scavenger and a level 1 wild beast. If you want to increase your strength faster, you can go outside the base to gain experience. Emma nodded. Yes, master. Then she walked out with her son, who had a dull look in his eyes. Mo Sure thought for a moment and said, you can leave your son in the base and let Happy take care of him. This way, it will be more convenient for you to gain experience. A hint of panic flashed in Emma's eyes. As Mo Sure's servant, who had been transformed by Mo Sure with Dracula's blood, she should have been 100% obedient to any of Mo Sure's orders. But only when it came to her son did she feel a little reluctant to part with him. She pleaded, Master, please let me take care of my son. Without him by my side, I feel uneasy. I know that I disobeyed your orders, and you can punish me however you want. I just beg you to let me take care of my son. Mo Sure smiled and comforted her. This is not an order, just a suggestion. Since being separated from your son will distract you, then you should take him with you. The panic in Emma's eyes immediately turned into gratitude. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master. After Emma left, Happy walked in. She looked at the backs of the mother and son with pity in her eyes. She gestured to Mo Sure. Brother Mo, do you have a way to restore her son's intelligence? They are so pitiful. Mo Sure shook his head and said, I don't have a solution yet. Maybe there will be one in the future. Happy nodded and gestured. Thank you, Brother Mo. Mo Sure shook his head and said with a smile, What are you thanking me for? I was planning to restore her son's intelligence when I could do it in the future. That night, the moonlight gently leaped in through the bedroom window and caressed Happy's cheeks. Mo Sure looked at Happy's side profile that was outlined by the moonlight and listened to her even breathing. A feeling called happiness slowly spread in his heart. After being reborn, he was able to meet such a kind and considerate girl like Happy who could possess terrifying strength at critical moments. He was definitely lucky. Bah! This analogy did not seem to be appropriate. He must have been lucky for 8 lifetimes. Therefore, he had to increase his strength as soon as possible and give her a stable and warm home. It was late at night. Happy was already sound asleep. Mo Sure was thinking about the system's upgrade, but he could not fall asleep no matter what. He quietly put on his clothes and went to the monk's room. More than 10 days ago, the monk had already created the anti-hacking program for the mecha. At that moment, he was working overtime, playing games. When he saw Mo Sure arrive, he quickly put out the cigarette in his hand and said the name of Buddha. Yo, Amitba. Boss, why are you here? It's the middle of the night. It's not very appropriate for you to suddenly come to my room and be seen by others. Mo Sure glared at him and said, Stop it. Cut the crap. Give me the game console. When he could not sleep at night, playing games was the best way to pass the time. Because as he played, he would realize that the more he played, the more energetic he became. The more he played, the more he could not sleep. Chapter 254. Mo Sure and the little monk played for an entire night. Speaking of which, the games in the Flaming Origin continent were indeed much more fun than those on Earth. The game's graphics were extremely realistic. Even the pores on a person's body and the texture of leaves could be seen clearly. Moreover, the game's plot and other aspects were definitely incomparable to those on Earth. After playing for an entire night, the little monk's eyes were already bloodshot. Although he was excited, his body was only equivalent to an ordinary person's body. Therefore, he looked a little tired. On the other hand, Mo sure looked very energetic. This was the difference between the physique of a hunter and an ordinary person. Mo sure only left the little monk's room after 8 o'clock in the morning. The people in the factory saw Mo sure come out of the little monk's room early in the morning. They were a little surprised. After Mo sure returned to his room, some people whispered, "What happened? Was Mr. Mo kicked out of his room by Happy? He's homeless and can only go to the monk's room?" "I don't think so. Maybe Mr. Mo took the initiative to go to the little monk's room." Happy. So love can really disappear? After Mo sure returned to his room, Happy saw that Mo sure had returned. Although she was puzzled about where Mo sure went last night, she also knew that Mo sure had a lot of secrets. Since he didn't want to say, she didn't ask. Instead, she took the initiative to prepare breakfast for Mo sure. Mo sure looked at Happy's busy back and felt warm in his heart. He said, "I couldn't sleep last night, so I went to the little monk and played games for an entire night." Happy turned around with a smile on her face. Her smile was very contagious. It made people feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. After breakfast, Mo sure wanted to lie on the bed and rest for a while. However, when he thought that the system's upgrade would be completed by noon, he couldn't help but be filled with anticipation. He still didn't feel sleepy. He could only lie on the bed and continue playing games. Speaking of which, this game called Ultimate Slaughter was getting more and more addictive the more he played it. He played until 12:25 noon. A notification suddenly sounded in his mind. System upgrade completed. When Mo sure heard this, he was instantly overjoyed. He quickly put down the game console in his hand and checked it in his mind. Upgrade Reward 1, 100 drops of Dracula's blood. Upgrade Reward 2, Flying Mechas, 10 sets. Upgrade Reward 3, Wormhole Transportation Device. 1 Mo sure looked at the rewards and nodded repeatedly. System, you're like a worm in my stomach. I'll get whatever I want. Just as he was about to ask for the blood of Dracula and the combat mech, he was rewarded. The wormhole teleportation device was also something he coveted. After all, there were almost no restrictions on the Flaming Origin continent. When he encountered danger, all he had to do was press the button, and he would be instantly teleported to the designated location. It was definitely a life-saving artifact. Then, the system notifications sounded again. Content of this upgrade: reward for killing Titan Dragon Blood. Kill reward mechanism. Killing a creature equivalent to a level 1 dire beast will result in 1 drop of Titan Dragon Blood. Killing a creature equivalent to a level 2 dire beast will reward you with 2 drops of Titan Dragon Blood. And so on. When Mo sure heard this notification, he suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. One had to know that he could only get 8 drops of Titan Dragon Blood every day. And now, he could get a drop of Titan Dragon Blood by killing a level 1 dire beast. If he could kill hundreds of dire beasts with a casual sweep of his dragon will, wouldn't that mean that he could get hundreds of drops of Titan Dragon Blood? This was a little F***king perverted. Thinking of this, he swept his dragon will. Within a radius of more than 100 kilometers, 10 dire beasts exploded into a bloody mist. Then, there was no then. Mo sure quietly waited for the notification to sound, but there was no sound. He couldn't help but ask in his mind, "System, where's the promised kill reward of Titan Dragon Blood?" The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face reward for killing. No dragon will or energy. You can only kill with your physical strength. F***ck. Why didn't you say so earlier? Mo sure felt like he had been tricked. The system's voice sounded again frowny face. The giant dragon's strongest point is not its energy or technique. It's their physical strength and terrifying strength. To become a dragon, a heaven-defying physical strength is a must. The kill reward is to strengthen the host's body. Mo sure understood that this was the system's good intentions. He didn't say anything else. Great success. Dragon Shadow Step activated. He instantly left the base. When he reappeared, he was already 100 kilometers away. He probed with his dragon will and began to look for level 1 to 3 dire beasts. With his strength as a level 2 hunter, It was already his limit to deal with level 3 dire beasts without using dragon will and energy. But because the dire beasts here were all strengthened by the Zero virus, so most of the dire beasts were above level 5. It was really difficult to find one below level 5. After searching for half an hour, he finally found an uninfected level 2 dire beast at the edge of Hunting Island 1. This time, Mo Sure asked in advance, "System, can I use Titan Dragon Claw?" The system's voice replied frowny face yes. Mo Sure asked again, "The invisible force of the Dragon Claw?" The system's voice sounded frowny face. Using invisible force is ineffective. You will only be rewarded if you rely on your own body's strength. Okay. He directly formed Titan Dragon Claw. He leaped up and slashed at the level 2 dire beast. That level 2 dire beast also directly pounced at Mo Sure. Mo Sure slightly tilted his body and dodged its sharp teeth and claws. The Titan Dragon Claw ruthlessly slashed across the side of its body. Chi! It directly slashed across the side of its body, leaving a long and bloody wound. Fresh blood instantly spurted out. However, compared to the dire beast's huge body, which was more than 30 meters long, this wound didn't cause much damage. And at this moment, this level 2 dire beast was enraged when it was hurt. Its body made a series of cracking sounds and rapidly grew in size. In just over 10 seconds, it grew to more than 200 meters long. In this way, the damage caused by the Titan Dragon Claw was almost negligible without the use of invisible force. Mo Sure slightly frowned and asked the system, "Can I use genetic weapons?" The system replied frowny face, "A real giant dragon disdains to use genetic weapons." F***CK. Mo Sure cursed. He simply retracted his Titan Dragon Claw. Since he had to rely on his own strength, he might as well not use anything. He watched as the 200-meter-long level 2 dire beast pounced towards him once again. Mo Sure leaped up and instantly reached a height of 10,000 meters. Then, he leaped up again and plunged headfirst into the ground at an extremely fast speed. His right hand was tightly clenched into a fist. Because he clenched it too tightly, his knuckles had turned white. Chapter 255. Mo Sure descended from the sky like a meteorite, smashing towards the 200-meter-long dire beast. His speed was extremely fast. The dire beast could not dodge at all. Boom! His fist smashed into the desolate beast's head. The tremendous impact caused the ground beneath the desolate beast's feet to sink down. Then, its skull shattered with a cracking sound. It caved in. The dire beast's 200-meter-long body also crashed onto the ground. The ground within a radius of 500 meters had already cracked. A single punch from a human was enough to knock a 200-meter-long beast to the ground. This scene was extremely visually impactful. However, Mo Sure knew that dire beasts would not die so easily. With the dire beast's strength, as long as the muscles and cells in its abdomen that stored energy were not destroyed, the energy would allow its body to quickly recover. As expected, the dire beast's sunken head was recovering at an extremely fast speed. However, its head was still heavily injured. Before its head recovered, it would not be able to stand up and fight again. Mo Sure took advantage of this opportunity to move a kilometer away. Following which, using dragon shadow steps, he instantly rushed to its abdomen from a kilometer away. Using the huge inertia, he punched towards its abdomen. One had to know that the abdomen of a dire beast was its Achilles heel. Therefore they were extremely protective of this place. Other than a thick layer of fat and muscle protection, there was also a layer of energy protection under the skin. Boom! Mo Sure's punch landed heavily on the dire beast's abdomen. The huge force caused the dire beast to slide over 100 meters on the ground. It created a 200-meter wide scar on the ground. However, because of the light shield protecting its abdomen, it did not cause any substantial damage to its abdomen. At this moment, the dire beast's head had completely recovered. It opened its mouth and a ray of energy attacked Mo Sure. However, Mo Sure had already leaped up and once again used dragon shadow steps to jump 10,000 meters into the air. At the place where Mo Sure was previously standing, a 200-meter-wide crater appeared on the ground after being hit by that ray of energy. Mo Sure was once again smashed into the ground. The desolate beast had just spat out energy once, so it needed more than 10 seconds before it could spit out energy again. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Mo Shi smashed down once more. Crack! The desolate beast's head caved in once again. At the same time, Mo Shi arrived 10 kilometers away. Activating Dragon Shadow Step, he once again rushed to the abdomen of the desolate beast. He viciously smashed the desolate beast's abdomen. The desolate beast slid back 500 meters. Dozens of giant trees with a diameter of several meters were broken. However, its abdomen still did not suffer any substantial damage. However, when Mo Shi used his draconic will to investigate, he discovered that cracks had already appeared on the energy shield around its abdomen. He was overjoyed. With a leap, he dodged the second beam of energy from the desolate beast. For the third time, it leaped into the air and fell down, causing its skull to cave in. Once again, he used Dragon Shadow Step and charged over from 10 kilometers away, smashing into its abdomen. Crack! This time, there was finally the sound of glass shattering. The light shield around the big guy's abdomen directly shattered. The flesh on its abdomen was torn open. Mo Shi took the opportunity to quickly form Titan Dragon Claw and slashed at the thick fat on its abdomen. The desolate beast also realized the danger and hurriedly struggled to get up. However, it was already too late. The Titan Dragon Claw easily cut through the fat on its abdomen. A large amount of energy inside immediately flowed out. It kept dissipating in the air. And its head that was healing itself lost the support of energy and could no longer heal itself. After a moment, this 200-meter-long level 2 desolate beast finally stopped moving. The cells on its body began to die. Phew! Mo Shi let out a long breath. He was used to the assistance of draconic will and energy, so his battles had always been very easy. Now, without using draconic will and energy attacks, it was really not easy to fight with pure physical strength. If others knew what Mo Shi was thinking, they would probably vomit blood. Facing a desolate beast of the same level, without using any energy attacks or telekinesis attacks, just relying on physical strength, he defeated this desolate beast in just 6 punches. It was completely a one-sided crushing. Was this not easy? If it were anyone else, they would not be able to do it at all. One had to know that the strongest aspect of a desolate beast was its physical strength. Now that you directly crushed a desolate beast of the same level with your physical strength, was this not easy? Of course, this was all because Mo Shi had taken countless drops of Titan Dragon blood and changed his physique. His physical strength, and other aspects were far superior to hunters of the same level. Otherwise, he would not be able to challenge a desolate beast of the same level with his bare hands. At this moment, the system's notification finally sounded in Mo Shi's mind. Killed 2 desolate beasts, obtained 2 drops of Titan Dragon blood. Mo Shi's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He checked his backpack and saw that there were indeed 2 small bottles there. He opened the bottles and absorbed the 2 drops of blood. Next, he continued to look for desolate beasts. Another half an hour later, he found a level 1 desolate beast. Against a level 1 desolate beast, Mo Shi killed it with just 1 punch. The system's notification sounded in his mind again. Killed 1 level 1 desolate beast, obtained 1 drop of Titan Dragon blood. In the following day, Mo Shi killed more than 50 desolate beasts. Most of them were below level 2. He obtained as many as 83 drops of Titan Dragon blood. Including the 8 drops he received from signing in, he had a total of 92 drops. This was more than 10 times the amount he obtained in a day. After consuming all the blood, Mo Shi felt that the energy in his body was surging. Every muscle in his body was filled with strength. At this rate, he would be able to level up again in at most a month. But Mo Shi was still not satisfied. It was not that he was not killing the desolate beasts fast enough. Most importantly, there were not that many level 1 and level 2 desolate beasts on the first hunting island. There were many level 5 desolate beasts, but with Mo Shi's current strength, he could not fight them alone with his bare hands. It seemed that he had to find a place with more level 1 and level 2 desolate beasts. The place with the most level 1 and level 2 desolate beasts was naturally the second hunting ground. On the planet where the second hunting ground was located, the highest level was a level 2 desolate beast. So if Mo Shi went there, not only would his life not be in danger, but he could also quickly kill the desolate beasts and obtain the Titan Dragon blood. As for the base, there were a total of 17 mechas guarding it, which was equivalent to 17 desolate hunters. In addition, the Dragon Palace could defend against any attack below the level of a Desolate Hunter. At the same time, it could kill any enemy below the level of a Desolate Hunter. So there was no need to worry. To go to any hunting ground, tickets were required. And the tickets were not cheap. To go to the second hunting island, a ticket cost 20,000. Chapter 256. A ticket to the second hunting ground cost 20,000. This was indeed a little expensive. However, one should not forget that Mo Sure had taken over the first hunting island. Naturally, he had taken over everything that had been on the island. That included Belki's cash and electronic currency. All of Belki's assets, including fixed assets, more than 100 million in electronic currency, and more than 2 million in cash. The electronic currency required facial recognition to be used. However, after more than 10 days of research, Little Monk had cracked the facial recognition program. He had replaced Belki's face with Mo Sure's. Therefore, Mo Sure was now a millionaire with 100 million and 2 million in cash. Of course, as the owner of the island, this amount of money was indeed a little embarrassing. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Belki had not managed his business well. He had squandered tens of billions of cash to this amount. However, with 100 million in cash, he was definitely an overlord on the mainland. Moreover, one should not forget that there was a crystal source vein under the first hunting island. It was worth a lot of money. Before going to the second hunting island, Mo Sure gathered everyone in the base. He said to these people, "I have a way to greatly increase your strength in a short period of time. You will be comparable to a level 10 great hunter." Everyone was overjoyed when they heard this. Among them, the strongest was only a level 2 great hunter. If he wanted to become a level 10 great hunter, it would take him at least 3 to 5 years to do so. As for the others, it was needless to say. Now that Mr. Mo could help them become level 10 great hunters in a short period of time, how could they not be excited? Of course, there were smart people among these people. They quickly raised a question. "Mr. Mo, there must be a condition to become a level 10 great hunter in a short period of time, right?" Mo Sure nodded and said, "Of course. There is only one condition to become a level 10 great hunter in a short period of time, and that is to become a blood kindred." Blood kindred. This. Hearing Mo Sure's words, everyone's heart shuddered. They were very excited when they heard that they could become level 10 great hunters in a short period of time. However, the price of this condition was too high. "Mr. Mo, after becoming a member of the Blood Clan, do you have to drink human blood continuously?" Mo Sure pointed at the curvaceous Emma. "This Emma has the most right to speak." Emma took a step forward. Every step she took revealed the fatal seduction of a mature woman. Although she did not deliberately seduce anyone, she was born with this kind of temperament. There was no other way. Many of the men below felt their throats dry up when they saw Emma. In the face of such a woman, there was no man who wouldn't be moved, even if this woman was a vampire. Even the little monk's eyes lit up. However, those men quickly lowered their heads. She did not dare to look at Emma again. In their eyes, Emma was Mr. Mo's woman. Even though her relationship with Mr. Mo was not as close as Happy's relationship with Mr. Mo. However, any man would be tempted by such a woman who exuded a fatal temptation from head to toe. Mr. Mo was no exception. In that case, she was naturally Mr. Mo's woman. Who dared to have designs on Mr. Mo's woman? Wasn't that just courting death? Thinking of this, they didn't even dare to look at Emma. The little monk also put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha in a low voice. "Amitba, it's all in vain." Emma glanced at the people below. Her voice was also full of temptation, although she was only speaking in a normal tone. After advancing to a level 10 super mutant vampire, the desire for human blood in your heart will be greatly reduced. You can completely use the blood of other creatures to replace human blood. Although human blood is still delicious in the eyes of level 10 super mutant vampires, it is not indispensable. As a former human, I can completely resist this temptation. Mo Sure spoke at this moment. When I first found Emma, she was forcefully turned into a vampire. At that time, she was only a level 1 vampire. For level 1 vampires, human blood is a necessity. But at that time, She would rather starve to death than taste a mouthful of human blood that was delivered to her mouth. If even Emma could resist when she had to suck blood at level 1, then when you become level 10 super mutant vampires, human blood is not a necessity. Could it be that you still can't resist? When the people below heard this, they all looked ashamed. Emma continued speaking. After becoming a vampire, there is one greatest benefit: immortality. As long as you continue to suck blood and maintain your body's condition, then you will have almost endless life. This sentence reminded everyone, and many people's eyes lit up. Although they already knew that the legendary vampires were almost immortal, but they did not really believe it. Even monsters like zombies would rot after hundreds of years. Naturally, vampires would not be spared. But now, hearing it from a vampire personally, they finally believed it a little. That was an endless life. Who did not want to live forever? Emo sure looked at the people below, and each of their eyes lit up. He continued speaking. Of course, I will not force you. Everything will be voluntary. There are only 100 people in the first batch. If anyone wants to be turned into a vampire in the future, we will talk about it later. When everyone heard Emo sure's words, they all raised their hands. Mr. Mo, I want to become a vampire. Mr. Mo, I want it too. Among them, the most enthusiastic ones were those who were still rank 1 and rank 2 hunters. They saw that the people around them had all become stronger, but because of their lack of talent, they had been stuck at level 1 or 2. Now that there was a chance to become a level 10 hunter, how could they not be excited? Emo sure waved at Guo Jutao and gave him 100 small bottles. He said, "Pick 100 people and give each of them a bottle." Guo Jutao nodded and said, "Yes, Mr. Mo." So that night, there were 100 level 10 super mutant vampires in the base. Soon, these 100 people would become level 1 evolved vampires. At that time, the base's strength would be greatly improved. After doing all this, Emosha said to Emma, "It seems that your strength can only increase quickly by sucking more blood? And it must be the blood of creatures that are on par with you or beyond your strength." Emma nodded. "Yes, master." Emosha said, "With your strength, it will be too difficult to deal with the level 5 wild beasts on the island. Come with me to a place tomorrow." Emma had no objections. "Yes, master." The next morning, Emosha told Happy that he would be away for a few days. Even though Happy was reluctant to part with him, he still supported Emosha. He told Emosha to go and come back early. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Emosha took Emma and her son and left the base. When people saw the three of them leave, they all thought to themselves, "She really is Mr. Mo's woman." Some people muttered in their hearts, "Won't Happy be jealous?" When they turned around, they saw that Happy had already gone to the farm to work. Happy felt that the others were getting stronger quickly, but he was still an ordinary person. If he couldn't help much, he could only go to the farm. So he worked on the farm every day. The farm was named after her, Happy Farm. Chapter 257. The sun hung high in the sky above the blue sea. Emosha and Emma spent more than 5 hours flying across the sea and arrived at Hunting Island No. 2. Hunting Island No. 2 was about the same size as Hunting Island No. 1. However, compared to the deserted Hunting Island No. 1, Hunting Island No. 2 was as busy as a marketplace. After all, there were countless level 1 and level 2 wild beasts in Hunting Ground No. 1. It was suitable for level 1 to level 2 hunters to train here. Level 1 and level 2 hunters were the most numerous in the Flaming Land. When Emosha and Emma landed on Hunting Island No. 1, they attracted a lot of attention. To be exact, it was Emma who attracted a lot of attention. The feminine charm that she exuded with every movement was truly irresistible. Of course, Emosha had noticed this. He frowned slightly. He didn't think it through. He wanted to let Emma improve her strength. However, looking at the current situation, it might cause some trouble. Although he wasn't a person who was afraid of trouble, he was afraid of trouble. Sigh, forget it. Since he's already here, let him be. As they walked forward with the crowd, they saw that the entire Hunting Island No. 2 had all kinds of facilities. Entertainment, dining, leisure, socializing, everything was there. Emosha wasn't interested in these. He brought Emma and went straight to the ticketing hall. They used their real names to buy tickets. The monk had already forged Mo Sher and Emma's information on the internet. At this moment, there were already long lines at more than 10 ticketing windows. Mo Sher brought Emma and her son to the back of one of the lines. In front of them was a beautiful girl in her 20s. When she inadvertently turned around and saw Emma, she couldn't help but be stunned. Then, a hint of jealousy flashed in her eyes. She thought that she was already very beautiful, but in front of this woman, she actually felt a sense of inferiority. Emma didn't care about this. After a while, 5 people came from the line next to her. An insufferably arrogant young man and 4 middle-aged men. Mo Sher secretly used the blood dragon's eye to look at the 5 of them. The young man was a level 1 hunter. Of the 4 middle-aged men behind him, 3 were level 6 scavengers and 1 was a level 4 psychic master. It was obvious that he was a young master from some major power who was here to gain experience. The 4 bodyguards around him were there to protect him. The young man glanced at the people in the ticketing hall and seemed a little impatient. But when he glanced at Emma, he suddenly looked away. He looked at Emma from head to toe. Especially when he saw Emma's curvaceous figure from the side. His eyes couldn't help but flicker with a certain flame. He had played with many women, but he had never seen one with such a beautiful figure and such a beautiful face. "Beauty, do you want to team up with me later?" He couldn't help but ask. Emma didn't even look at her. The young man sneered inwardly. He had seen too many women who pretended to be aloof. As long as he threw out some temptation, these women would rush to curry favor with him. They were all the same. He spoke again. "Beauty, I'm afraid it's not safe for you to bring a child with you. Why don't we team up? Let me introduce myself. My surname is Cheng and my name is Bao. Others call me Third Young Master Cheng. Have you heard of the Cheng family? The top 100 forces in Yuzhou." As soon as he said this, some people around looked over. It turned out to be the Cheng family, one of the top 100 forces in Yuzhou. Each of the top 100 forces in Yuzhou had at least one desolate hunter. The Cheng family of Yuzhou was ranked 84th among the forces in Yuzhou. It didn't seem to be ranked high, but Yuzhou was very big. Among them, there were more than 30,000 forces, big and small. Among so many forces, those who could be ranked in the top 100 definitely had real strength. When the people around knew that Cheng Bao was the 3rd young master of the Cheng family of Yuzhou, they all had a kind smile on their faces. "So it's 3rd young master Cheng. Sorry for the disrespect. Hello, 3rd young master Cheng. I visited the Cheng family of Yuzhou a month ago." "3rd young master Cheng, you don't have to pay later. I'll pay for your ticket." Cheng Bao listened to the flattery around him and showed a satisfied expression. Then he looked at Emma. "The 4 people behind me are all level 5 desolate hunters. They can definitely keep you and your child safe. So I suggest that you form a team." Emma didn't even look at him and said coldly, "Not interested." Hearing this, 3rd young Master Cheng's face darkened. He didn't introduce himself just now and was rejected by this woman. He could only say that she didn't know his identity. Now that she knew his identity, she still dared to reject him. This made 3rd young Master Cheng feel that he had lost face in front of so many people. He snorted coldly. "Good, you have guts." But in his heart he said, "When we reach the 2nd hunting ground, you will beg me." When the surrounding people saw that this woman actually rejected 3rd young Master Cheng, they all tried to flatter 3rd young Master Cheng. "It's not easy for you to take care of a child. Why don't you form a team with 3rd young Master Cheng? The strong people behind 3rd young Master Cheng can protect your son. You can also train without worry. Alas, why do you have to compete with yourself? Take a step back and you will have a better view." Emma continued to ignore these people. After queuing for more than 10 minutes, Mo Sher and the others bought the tickets. They had signed a life and death contract. In the hunting ground, it was inevitable that there would be casualties. The life and death contract stated that the casualties in the hunting ground had nothing to do with the hunting ground. Then, they came to the teleportation hall and were teleported to the 2nd hunting ground. The 2nd hunting ground was called the Night Ghost Planet. The place where Mo Sher and the others were teleported to was a wasteland. In the sky, there was a pale white setting sun. Looking around, the ground was filled with rocks of various sizes. There was not even a single plant. Before coming to the hunting ground, these people had basically read about the strategy of the second hunting ground on the internet. They knew that this wasteland looked peaceful during the day, as if there was nothing there. But at night, it was extremely dangerous. Therefore, they had to leave this place as soon as they were teleported here. The people who had just been teleported here activated their hover skates and left quickly. Emo, Sher and Emma were the only ones who didn't leave. They stayed where they were. When the beautiful girl who stood in front of Emma saw this, her eyes flashed with a hint of gloating. Then she left quickly. Third young Master Chung saw Emo, Sher and Emma together. He finally understood why this woman ignored him just now. He opened his mouth slightly and was about to say something to Emo, Sher. But a level 6 hunter beside him reminded him. Third young Master, we are here to train this time. Master said not to cause any trouble. Seeing this, third young Master Chung snorted coldly. They are lucky. Then, he activated his hover skates and flew into the distance. Third young Master Chung did not know that he had just walked around the gates of hell. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.